Welcome back to another episode of The Lost. I am Shad, and with me is Razor. And we would actually like to dedicate this particular episode to someone who's been following us for quite some time now. His name is Vince Vilborn, and he's wanted this for a long time.
He has, it's true.
We aim to please.
Let it never be said that there's not an advantage to having a smaller channel. It lets us read all the comments and actually pay attention to people.
I try to shy away from doing too much of that myself, but every so often, I take a look through.
It is rare on YouTube when you have a comment section that's not just absolutely vile, but ours is actually decent most of the time.
Yeah, we get some fairly sane individuals following us, which I think likes to speak to the quality of our content.
It's like I said, it's because it's still small, tight knit. It's a little community. It's not every rando like 10,000 people who we've never seen before all having an opinion for 10 seconds and then they forget you exist and go away.
I like to think we've done a good job over the years. And honestly, tonight's discussion point is not without precedent in terms of roughly where we're placing it in terms of talking about secret characters the way we currently are.
Well, it's interesting. This episode's character technically could have gone in MK1.
Technically.
And does belong in MK3. So by putting it here, we're kind of splitting the difference.
Has a mention in MK2, in an indirect manner of speaking.
It's true.
So I think that this is overall a decent place to put this character.
Right.
So this is for you, Vince. Thank you for sticking with us and keeping the faith. So we actually go back to the arcade days of MK1 here, and a little thing called the game audit screen.
Yes. So, to give a little context, in Mortal Kombat 1, there was a code called an error macro, which is, if you don't know anything about programming, a macro is basically a set of pre-programmed instructions that the code is supposed to do whenever a specific trigger happens. It's a shortcut. For example, if you were playing, say, Mortal Kombat on the PC, you could make a macro where all you have to do is press the letter S or whatever, and it would do like down, forward, high punch for you. You could make a macro to do a special move as a single button, if you knew how to program your keyboard and stuff. So a macro is basically a shortcut, does a thing when a specific condition happens. An error macro is a macro that plays whenever the game experiences an error. And this particular macro would just count how many errors there had been since the last boot up. And you could see this countdown, like how many errors there have been, if you access the game's debug menu, which eventually some people in the arcades figured out how to do. And the error macros counter was located directly under the counter that keeps track of how many times people have found Reptile and fought him.
The list is highest battle reached, winning streak reset count, different characters picked, same characters picked, Goro wins, Goro loss, Shang Tsung beaten, Reptile appearances, Reptile battles, and Ermacs.
Yes. Ed Boon called it Ermacs instead of error macros. He shortened it. Now, the word kind of sounds like a person's name, and it's located directly under the Reptile battles. So people thought, when they saw this debug screen, that there was another hidden character in the game besides Reptile named Ermac.
Now, we should actually say there's been a little bit of, mistranslations and various alternate interpretations of what Ermac actually means over the ages.
That's true. So a lot of people, they've heard Ermac was a glitch, Ermac was a bug, Ermac was a rumor. Most often the way you would hear the story back in the old arcade days was that an Ermac, the specific glitch, it would turn Scorpion red. So Ermac was a red ninja. Here's the thing. Totally false. Yep. There is no such thing as a character named Ermac found anywhere in Mortal Kombat 1. The glitch that turns Scorpion red does not even actually exist. There are some graphical glitches you can get that turn people into like a mess of neon inverted colors, like it often happens to like Raiden during Fatalities and stuff like that.
There's one in particular I remember for Sonya on the SNES, like if you fight her during an endurance round at the bottom of the pit.
Yeah, but it doesn't just turn one color on a person to a different color and keep the rest of them the same. It makes them completely buggy looking.
It doesn't palette swap them, so to speak.
No, you cannot just get Scorpion but red instead of yellow. You'll get Scorpion in like hot pink and neon blue, like every color on his body will be wrong.
Some people out there think it means error machine. Some people out there thought that Ermac meant earnings per machines, which I don't know, man. I don't know.
There was, a lot of rumor and speculation back in the day. Mortal Kombat 1's most famous rumor was Ermac. And, Mortal Kombat 2 had a number of rumors. It had, oh, well, if Liu Kang could turn into a dragon, then Sub-Zero can turn into a polar bear. And in fact, everybody has an animality.
And, they picked up on this, so
yeah.
Ed started putting bullshit in the game audit screen of MK2. Kano transformations.
Yeah, Kano transformations is supposed to count how many times someone playing Shang Tsung has turned into Kano. But it's there to trick you because Shang can't turn into Kano in that game.
Ed, you lovable asshole.
Ed put deliberate fakes in the game audit screens to mess with people. Another one was people thought, oh, there was a red male ninja in MK1. Now there's female ninjas in MK2, so there must be a red female, and that's where we get Scarlet from.
Yeah.
Where all this is going is that starting with MK3 on, they started, bringing the rumors to life. Like, they would make them real to mess with fans, or as, a nod to the fans. It'd be like, oh, everybody wanted animalities, I guess, so let's make animalities a real mechanic.
It was nice of them.
Yeah.
It was unprecedented for that period of time to actually see these things come to life.
Nobody else in video games was really doing that. Before Ermac, you had, the Street Fighter rumors that Ken and Ryu's master, whose name was going to be Sheng Long, would be a character. And Capcom created Akuma in reference to that. And then later they made Gouken, who basically looks like Shenlong was supposed to look, but they never actually made Shenlong.
But we're missing an important piece of the history here. Shenlong incidentally comes from a mistranslation of Ryu's.
That's true.
Win speech, where he's like, you must defeat Shenlong to stand a chance. And
yeah,
that was the mistranslation of him saying, you must defeat my Dragon Punch to stand a chance.
Yeah, it was supposed to be you must defeat the Shoryuken.
Yeah, something like that.
Shenlong.
That was it. But this does go back to another major thing that brought Ermac to life in the minds of the players and the fan base. Electronic Gaming Monthly Magazine, aka EGM.
Indeed.
EGM got wind of this shit. And in October 1993, that's the issue. EGM, October 1993, they started perpetrating a hoax. Probably not their first, but definitely their most famous. And I have the letter here with me for reference. Their section called Tricks of the Trade. They had this monthly feature called Most Wanted Trick. So, it was about rumors and shit and, cheat codes.
Right.
So, this is the letter from someone named Tony Casey. I am a big fan of the arcade game Mortal Kombat. In fact, I can beat anybody I have ever played. I was the first kid in my neighborhood to find Reptile. About 6 months ago, I was playing the game, and before the fight started, this red ninja jumped on the screen and said, I will fight you near the statues. Now, about a week ago, I was playing against my friend Bob Shields, and we were both playing Johnny Cage. I beat him double flawless victory using only punches. Then suddenly the red ninja jumped onto the screen and said, I am Ermac. You will never defeat me. He kicked my ass, and the game said Ermac wins. Bob had a Polaroid camera with him, but the store was dark, and the picture didn't come out very good. Exactly how do you think you get to fight Ermac? Because we keep trying to get him to come back. I think it has something to do with the Warrior Shrine. Has anybody found him? So, beneath this letter, with EGM, asking, can anyone else find out about this mystery character? And maybe worth some prizes in upcoming issues if you do. You have a really dark, quote-unquote Polaroid of Ermac kind of standing at the warrior shrine. The whole thing is really, really dark. You can just barely make him out. It's a very convincing faked photo. And they propagated this rumor for a couple more months.
This would be far from the first or last time that EGM hoaxed people into believing there was a secret character in a fighting game, especially Mortal Kombat. Like, they were basically responsible for the Shenlong thing.
In a subsequent letter, someone said, when playing on the pit stage, you have to find Reptile. Second, you have to be on the second stage of the Warrior Shrine. Third, blocking will get you nowhere. Fourth, a double flawless victory must be obtained by using one punch button or kick button. Fifth, at least one combo must be strung. Sixth, a fatality is not required but must not be performed by Scorpion or Sonya. And the seventh most important technique to finding Ermac is this. If you notice, on the floor there is a large circle in the middle of the room. You must have your victim perfectly aligned in this circle. Like, it just went on for months and months.
And then for the Genesis home console version, they claimed there was a character named Nimbus Terrafaux. That's F-A-U-X, French for fake.
Ah, goodness. I remember one of the letters said that, like, his fatality was just him jump kicking your head off, I think. Ever since then, I've actually wanted to see Ermac jump kick someone's head off in an actual game. I think it'd be pretty sweet.
When they finally gave him a finishing move, the first one he got was just Johnny Cage's uppercut decap. I wonder...
I've always wondered, if that was actually a reference to the fact that you're supposed to find him using Johnny, or that letter which mentioned using Johnny Cage.
Well, when they finally did make Ermac a real character in Ultimate MK3, first of all, he was a hidden character. Him, Melina, and Classic Sub-Zero were all unlockables in Ultimate, the way Cyber Smoke was unlockable in Vanilla. You had to complete the Ultimate Combat code to reveal him on the select screen.
We're missing a bit of history because he did get acknowledgement in 2.
Oh, yeah, that's true. When Smoke and Jade would appear at the beginning of a match and drop some hint on how to find them, one of the random hits was just, Ermac who?
That end, at the end of a game, when you beat Shao Kahn, and it says Shao Kahn is defeated, you're once again the Mortal Kombat champion, there'd be some text at the bottom of the screen. And they would just, spell out a bunch of gibberish sometimes, which you had to decode and scramble. So you'd get, Yammer does it until exits. Unscramble that, and you get, Ermac does not exist. So they were very, very much in tune with the bullshit of the time.
It's surprising how fast they would jump onto these things, because, if you look at the dates of release, like, MK1 came out in 92, MK2 came out right away in 93. So, they didn't exactly have a lot of time to keep their finger on the pulse. They were making the next game while the current game was out.
Just throwing this shit in as they went along.
A lot of things about the early MK games, a lot of the rumors and the stuff that they would pick up on or throw out there and see if people would find it, it all kind of started in Chicago, because that's where they would put out the newest tests, the betas of each arcade machine, and then they just kind of spy on the local arcades and see if people were finding stuff or what the buzz was.
I wonder how long they hung out there for every day. Could you imagine that?
I like to just imagine the picture of some video arcade, and it's probably one of those ones that has a pizza place inside it. So
Yep.
People are playing a machine, and just a few feet behind him, Goski and Vogel and Tobias are sitting at a table looking over their shoulder, just spying on people playing their game.
Just pounding back the drinks. God, that must have been so fun. But to Ultimate 3, where it actually happened then.
Yes, that's where he finally became a real character. So, his character bio, when he was finally created, reads, an enigma to all who come into contact with him, Ermac's past remains shrouded in mystery. It's believed that he exists as a life force brought together by the souls of extinguished Outworld warriors. Shao Kahn has managed to take possession of these souls and use them to fight on the side of tyranny. And that bio pretty much stays the same from Ultimate to Trilogy. But in Ultimate, he had a placeholder arcade ladder ending.
Ah, one of those wonderful works of art.
Yes, that would later be changed to the official story for Trilogy. Like, he was obviously a character who was still somewhat a work in progress.
Having been in hiding since the first Mortal Kombat, neither the Earth nor the Outworld has recognized this elusive ninja. Ermac uses his victory in the tournament to prove his existence, as well as a warning that he will return as an unstoppable force in the fourth Mortal Kombat. Hi, I'm real. Okay, bye.
So, first of all, we've got an acknowledgement there, having been in hiding since the first Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
So they're saying, yes, he was in MK1. You just couldn't find him.
Go put more tokens in him, then just maybe you will.
He was there. He was a seeker. He was in hiding. You didn't see him, but he was totally there. I swear, you guys.
Any press is good press.
Secondly, he will return in the fourth Mortal Kombat. No, he won't.
Yeah, I remember reading that and having some hope. Do you remember having that hope? I was so sad.
To be fair, like, half of the endings in Ultimate said that.
Yeah.
And most of those characters were not in 4.
Smokes did too. Something I actually do want to point out, though.
Okay.
As we move from Ultimate into Trilogy...
Yeah.
Ermac was unique in another sense. He was definitely not Caucasian.
No, he, like Jade, they didn't just palette swap his uniform, they changed his skin tone a bit, too. He's very...
He looks like he could be...
With shades of brown, it's so ambiguous what ethnicity it could be. Like, he could be Hispanic or Middle Eastern or black.
Yeah, like, we're working off a pair of, like, arms here. And part of his side and, like, his brow, basically. But he was definitely not white.
It's interesting, like, his in-game sprite is a particular shade of brown, and then, like, he looks lighter in, like, the Versus pose. And then in Tobias's art, he looks like just another white guy ninja like all the others. And, like, when it came to adaptations, like Defenders of the Realm, he's a white guy.
By Trilogy, he was actually white, too. They removed the brown shade. It only shows up in Ultimate 3. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, it's curious why they would deliberately color him and then, like, take it away immediately. Like,
I was actually kind of disappointed because I liked that skin tone on him.
It makes sense from a story point of view that if you were to create a body for someone that's an amalgamation of a whole bunch of different warriors, and theoretically all these different warriors come from different backgrounds or in a different...
it wouldn't just be a white guy, you know?
Yeah, if you melded a whole bunch of people from different backgrounds together, you'd get some kind of a middle brown tone. It's like in the Matrix sequels, when you see the city of Zion, most people are some shade of brown because of all the racial intermixing, because these are the last survivors of humanity and they're from all over the place and they've just been like making children with each other, so everybody's mixed race. Yeah, it's so odd that they abandoned that so quickly.
They just walked it back. I found it really disappointing. Anywho.
Yeah. So Ermac was introduced with a fairly simple set of special moves. He has, because he's a ninja, it's almost like obligatory that you get Scorpion's teleport punch, apparently.
But I did like how they managed to make it stand out from his a little bit, in that they gave him this distracting fire effect.
That's true. He did like disappear into a puff of flame like Reptile does when he turns invisible.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, in the arcade era, when Scorpion would teleport, it wasn't fire like it is in the modern games. He would leave a flickering after image because he's a ghost.
And Ermac would just, like, kapoof.
Yeah.
A little wall of fire and he was behind you.
In fact, this is often forgotten these days, but in old strategy guides, like, there was no in-game pause menu that would say what the official names for moves are. Different guides would have their own names for different moves. For example, sometimes a guide would call Liu Kang's flying kick the flying kick. Sometimes they'd call it the dragon kick. Some guides would call Sub-Zero's move the Ice Clone, and others would call it the Sub-Zerox.
Oh my god, that's terrible. The Superman, the flying torpedo.
Sometimes it's the spear, sometimes it's the harpoon, and in particular, some guides would call his teleport punch the decoy punch because of him leaving that afterimage. Like, the idea was he's trying to trick you into punching the fake him while the real him comes behind you and punches you in the back of the head. So there's some interesting flavor there that's kind of been lost to the ages. But yeah, Ermac would disappear in a poof of flame when he did his Scorpion ripoff punch.
Honestly, all of the special moves were really, really neat. And I liked his fireball, and you know where I'm going with this. Like, it's an amalgamation of 10,000 souls or more. And what is he using as his projectile but the same thing that Shao Kahn does?
Right. He has Shao Kahn and MK3 would shoot this, it looks like a photon torpedo from Star Trek, except green. It even has the same sound effect that they use in Star Trek. He'd shoot it out of his face instead of throwing the javelin from MK2.
Yeah, he just spit it out.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it was supposed to be coming from his eyes or his mouth.
It felt like a mouth thing to me. I felt like if it was his eyes, there'd be...
He has his mouth open in the animation, but he could just be screaming. You know, it's so hard to say.
I'm looking at the sprites now as we're talking, and there's so many spikes on the thing. It could be intended in some angles to be like two of them side by side, and it's just really hard to see.
Well, he would shoot these things out of his face, and then they just reuse the fireball sprite for Ermac, because they both use souls, so it makes sense. So he's shooting this green blast of soul energy at you. And then Ermac's third and most iconic ability was telekinesis. He would lift you up in the air and slam you on the ground for a pop-up.
The shit that people did with this thing in the arcades. I witnessed some rage quits because of this shit. The first month or two, no one knew how it fucking worked. Eventually people figured out, it's only like within, half screen's distance or whatever, but it was a very frightening prospect.
There's a specific window. They have to be a certain distance or it won't catch them.
And, there's no visual effect apart from him, raising his arm to determine that's what's happening.
No, that's an interesting thing about the old arcade days, is they didn't start putting, glowing auras on everybody's everything until the 3D era. Yeah. For example, when Sindel flies now, she's always got purple fairy dust coming off of her. When Ermac and Kenshi use their telekinesis, it always covers their hand and the opponent in a blue or green glow. A lot of those effects aren't really necessary and weren't there in the 2D games. If you think about it, in the real world, if someone had telekinesis, there wouldn't be a glowing light around them. If you're lifting someone with your mind, it would pretty much be invisible.
I'm with you on that. I've never been a fan of the giant glow around his hand and around the enemy. It's halfway it's there to look impressive and halfway it's there for competitive purposes as a tell.
So here's the thing, is lore-wise, I think it's an inspired choice to give a guy whose powers come from being made of a whole bunch of ghosts telekinesis. Because you think about what is a ghost, what can a ghost do? Well, they're see-through and intangible, they can't touch stuff, but they can move stuff with their minds. Like a poltergeist haunting a house, you can't see them and all your fucking silverware and fine china is flying around the room. That's what a haunting looks like. So if you were a sewn together meat puppet body full of ghosts, what superpower would you be most likely to have? Telekinesis like a poltergeist. I think they try to visually over-explain sometimes with those glowing effects. Now in MKX, if Ermac does his telekinetic lift to somebody, you see a swarm of the ghosts come out of him and swarm the opponent. You can see the ghosts lifting the opponent up in the air.
It's not as fun that way to me.
I can see the logic of visually explaining how the move works that way, but I don't think it's entirely necessary all the time. I don't mind it for Ermac, But it does bother me. I don't think Sindel needs to glow when she flies.
Some things are more effective if you just let them be. I dislike this choice a little bit more than you do. I'm okay with his eyes glowing, his hand glowing perhaps, but there's a point where enough is enough.
I mean, I like a little touch
works.
of like in MKX he had a lot of like idle animations where it looked like souls were trying to escape from his body and he'd like reel them back into himself or like even grab them out of the air.
That stuff is cool.
I do like little touches like that. When he does the teleport punch now, like you see him explode into souls and then the souls like reform where he's delivering the teleport punch from. It's sort of like how Cyrax breaks into pieces when he teleports and then reassembles.
Which I'm actually a fan of. That's one I actually do enjoy.
I think that's an example of like a better visual effect than just like the bursting into flame.
It makes a bit more sense, yes.
Yeah, it fits the theme, you know, like it brings the room together. So yeah, and then for fatalities in Ultimate and Trilogy, like we said, he had Johnny Cage's uppercut punch. And his second finisher was basically to do the teleport slam over and over again until you explode. Kind of simplistic, but it got the job done.
Simplistic, a little bit silly in terms of physics.
It's the issue with animations on Mortal Kombat 3 finishers in general. Like, many of them are good ideas that were made silly by the graphics. For example, if Kung Lao chops someone in half, their hands are floating next to their waist and they don't fall over, like the legs with the floating hands stay standing up the entire time.
Part of it was to leave it be silly because they'd gotten a little bit of heat at that point.
Yeah, there was a lot of, like, an increase in the tongue-in-cheek humor aspect of finishing moves from 1 to 2 to 3 as a response to, like, the moral panic over the game. Like, it started with just having friendships and babalities, and then by 3 it got to the point where literally every finishing move is a cartoon.
Pretty much. Thank God for Mugen.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it wouldn't really take anything to change. Like, you could use sprites that are already in the game, just replace, like, the body that's being slammed up and down with, like, the sprite of somebody being swept, you know? So they're lying on their back facing up. That's all it would really take.
Honestly, like, you could just have the guy be lifted up into the air. And if you just have him vibrate back and forth for a second before blowing up, that would have been much more effective. And they probably knew that.
I do think there's room for the slamming them repeatedly on the ground. It's got like a visceral action to it, and it's been done in other games. Like, I'm pretty sure he has it in Deception. And it looks, you know, not cartoony. It looks like painful and gory.
He did not have animalities or friendships initially in Ultimate. Like Sub-Zero.
That's true. There are some characters in Ultimate. Ultimate was interesting for animalities in particular, because in Vanilla 3, everybody's animalities were a single color and glowing. They turned into like the spirit of an animal. But then all of the characters added in Ultimate just turned into regular animals that were like fully colored and didn't glow.
I've always thought that they were never particularly happy with their initial choice. And they went, no, let's actually do it right.
I mean, if you're gonna change the art style, then redo every character. Don't have two clashing art styles in the same game.
Yeah, it always bothered me that they didn't. But Ermac did get his animality in Trilogy.
That's true.
And it was fucked up, honestly. It was a little bit messed up. He's just this frog.
Yeah.
This tiny frog. And it just opens its mouth to the size of the opponent and kind of chomps them. You don't see it swallow them.
It's kind of like...
It kind of just chomps them and they disintegrate, more or less.
It's basically the silly, cartoonish, taken to the furthest extreme version of Reptiles, Fatalities where he'd eat you, done by a very tiny, like a 3-pixel tall frog.
It's so dumb.
It's
so dumb.
The funny thing is, you could fix a lot of the dumb animalities just by giving them to a different character. Like, if you're going to animate a frog, why not have Reptile be the frog? and Ermac become the monkey. You know?
I've always wondered that myself. Like, why not give the penguin with the exploding egg to classic Sub?
Take the scorpion away from Shiva and give it to Scorpion. And then make something else for Shiva.
The world will never know. But the friendship that he got in Trilogy was, I suppose, somewhat entertaining. He does the rain wind pose, where he's like got both hands out to the sides.
Yeah, the summoning the weather pose that Rain has kept in future games and none of the other ninjas have.
And your opponent levitates, and then just disappears in a puff of smoke. And then Ermac's hand just like kind of goes downwards in that reptile turning invisible moment. And there's an explosion at his feet, and a small rabbit reappears. Ermac just turns you into a rabbit for a friendship.
Yes, he does a magic trick.
It's cute.
It's a creative reuse of sprites, because
yeah,
you've got a wind pose in there, you've got reptile turning invisible, and the bunny rabbit is just Kitana's animality, isn't it?
Yes,
yeah.
It is.
So, just, you can cobble a lot together from the existing assets, is the lesson here.
They made a masterclass out of that with some characters going on, I found.
Yeah.
Ermac was probably, like, some of the actual start of it.
And again, that's the genius of Mugen today, is how much people can do with the sprites, with sometimes little to no editing and creating new sprites, just reusing the content that's already in Ultimate and Trilogy.
We've been playing a little bit of Mugen, if you can't tell, folks. It's been fun. So we have this wonderful character introduced to us for the first time ever in the arcades after years and years of rumor and myth, and we find in his trilogy ending what he actually is. Mm-hmm. Now, my own experience in the arcades was like, in terms of like top 3 selected characters, Ermac was up there. As soon as he was discovered, people were just chaining together crazy jump kick and teleport punch and levitation combos with the guy day in and out. Like, there wasn't an Ermac match that didn't have a 50% damage combo at least.
Well, that's always kind of the interesting thing with, like, new edition and secret characters. If you've been playing vanilla for a while, you're like, oh, Nightwolf, Cabal, these characters are solved. I know everything about them. And somebody unlocks Smoke, and you're like, ooh, a new toy to play with. And then Ultimate comes out, and it's all about Scorpion and Katana and Reptile and Jade. And then you unlock those characters, and like, ooh, Ermac. Classic Sub-Zero, new toys to play with, Yeah,
he got a lot of use.
And I also imagine, like, when Trilogy came out, first of all, Rain and Noob Saibot were incredibly broken. So people are going to gravitate towards them anyway because they can do, like, fucking infinites. It's just plain cheating, and you want to win.
Even classic Sub had one, actually.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it was the PS version, but it was definitely the N64 version. If you just timed the jump right after his jungle combo and followed him through the air, you could just keep doing it. Trilogy was a lot of things, but Balanced was not one of them.
No, but I have to imagine, even if Rain and Noob were not utter bullshit, people still would have played them more than the other characters by virtue of the fact that they were new.
Oh yeah, totally. A little detail that I think's actually been kind of lost to the mists of time. A small retcon in a sea of retcons. So, like you said earlier, when you were reading his first initial Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 bio,
yeah,
it's believed that he exists as a life force brought together by the souls of extinguished outworld warriors. Shao Kahn has managed to take possession of these souls and use them to fight on the side of tyranny. Initially, when I first read that bio back in the day, I thought that Ermac kind of came together on his own, as opposed to being created by Kahn. It doesn't say there that Kahn made the guy, but that Kahn took possession of him. Now, later games, like 9, said that Ermac was his latest creation, or something in the dialogue like that. But I just wanted to point that out.
That's true. The wording is vague, and there is room for interpretation. Personally, I always read it as Shao Kahn stole those souls, like these extinguished outworld warriors are people Shao Kahn fought and defeated and took the souls. And then he made Ermac out of them, which is what the story actually is.
It is.
But yeah, I can understand how someone reading it would think that the souls, like those warriors died, and then Shao Kahn got his hands on the souls and took control of them. Like Ermac already existed, or Ermac's death or creation was not Shao Kahn. I could see how someone could read it that way.
That's all I'm saying. Back in the day, like, I had this long-standing mental image of a bunch of souls coalescing in the wastelands over corpses and forming this guy. And then Shao Kahn is like, oh, hey, neat, a new toy to play with. Yoink! But it is what it is now.
I always had this image, and it's influenced by all the different media we've had. You know, there's many stories in Defenders of the Realm and Conquest and Malibu about how war-torn Outworld is, and how there's all these rebel camps that are constantly trying to resist the rule of Shao Kahn, and Kahn has to send these assassins that he has working for him, like Kitana and Melina, out into the wastelands all the time to quell rebellions, to put down dissidents, you know? So they've always painted the image that Outworld is full of warriors who every once in a while will try to kick Shao Kahn off the throne, and he has to take them down to, you know, assert his dominance over the land. And that it's not just a foregone conclusion that he'll always be on the throne, nothing challenges him. So the idea that every once in a while these rebels, like Shao Kahn, has to go out to the front lines in, you know, there's these battles in the wasteland, and there's always wars being fought, and he sometimes leads his soldiers out there and personally takes a few heads and steals some souls, because Shao Kahn is an established soul stealer, taught Shang how to do it. It always kind of made sense to me that, okay, Ermac is probably made of a bunch of rebels that opposed Kahn and got killed by him. And then they expanded on that after Trilogy. Like in Deadly Alliance and Deception, we do find out that Ermac is an unwilling slave to Kahn and is under mind control, and that mind control can be broken.
So this is the point where we move forward to Deadly Alliance and Deception.
Yeah. Like I said, Ermac did in fact not return for the 4th Mortal Kombat.
Made me very upset and angry. I was promised so many things by Trilogy, Razor. I was promised that Smoke would return. I was promised that Ermac would return. What did I get? I got fucking Jarek.
We were promised that we'd find out who Classic Sub-Zero really is. Turns out the answer is nobody. He doesn't exist.
Can you imagine it? Do you remember that? Were you sitting there like I was when Deception came out, still for some reason fucking going, gee, I hope they'll explain it this time. Jiminy Jillikers!
Well, as a kid, I was just as frustrated by the writing in Classic Sub-Zero's ending as I am as an adult.
Oh yeah, from
I
day
always
one.
kind of assumed that they didn't know what they were doing with that character, and that maybe he wasn't even real.
Day one.
I was ready to accept, as like a 12-year-old boy, that some things aren't canon.
So for me, it was like, okay, neat. They brought back the first guy. Scorpion killed him. I wonder what his story is. What the fuck do you mean no one knows who this guy is? Yes, we know who this guy is. He's the dude from MK1. What are you telling me that they're all shocked to find out? What the fuck? Fuck you!
What I remember the most about Classic Sub-Zero after, and people waiting for him to come back, is that literally from MK4 on, every single game,
Yep.
the development, the reveal of renders, period of, you know, fans on message boards waiting for the next game to come out. Every single game from 4 on, it's been, which Sub-Zero is this? Are they bringing the older brother back yet? And then they release a render with the scar on the eye, and people would be like, oh, okay. So for me, it's always been just waiting to see the scar. And that's why I get pissed off when Kuai Liang doesn't have the scar. Because the fucking debate. Which brother is it?
For what it's worth, I think that the era of UMK3 Sub-Zero speculation ended with Deception. Because once it was revealed that Noob Saibot was the original Sub-Zero, no one gave a shit anymore.
No, he's Johnny Cage, Classic Sub-Zero. The only guy from a previous tournament who it could be.
What are you talking about? It was obviously the Great Kung Lao.
Oh, of course.
Or it was Jared.
So if it was Jared, does that mean Scorpion also goes on the list of people who've killed Jared?
Yes. Dr. Hibbert voice. Yes. So, Ermac does not appear in Mortal Kombat 4, leaving us all sexually frustrated and unfulfilled.
He does get a mention in Deadly Alliance, so we at least know that he's still alive and what he's been up to since the end of MK3.
I greatly appreciated that, but it was such a cock tease. Oh my god.
Well,
at that time it was like, what, 2002, I think?
Yes, 2002 was when Deadly Alliance came out. You have to give it some credit, though, because it's on the popularity of him being mentioned again in that, probably, that got him into Deception.
Most likely.
Because, I think around 4, after the trilogy era, there was a sense of people had kind of overdosed on palette swapping, and were not the most enthused at the idea of, like, oh man, we gotta have Ermac and Rain back, all the colors.
At that point, it was a really, really welcome refreshment to see them coming back and looking completely different, nothing like each other.
Yeah, I mean, once they did return and they had their own costumes and looks, that improved things a lot for them, but I think in MK4, there was an audience that was happy to have just kind of the basics of Scorpion, Sub-Zero, and Reptile.
Yeah.
And not every color of the rainbow. But yeah, so in Deadly Alliance...
Kenshi's Conquest mode.
Yes, Kenshi's Conquest, and for those who don't know or don't remember, the way the Conquest mode worked in Deadly Alliance, as opposed to Deception and Armageddon, was that you didn't go on an adventure as a single protagonist. It was basically a training mode where you'd pick every character, and each character would have like 8 to 10 missions where you'd learn their moves. And there was often lore accompanying these training lessons. So, for example, you would find out what so-and-so had been up to since the last game. And it would sort of augment the information in their bios and endings. It
was all still very vague about what happened during MK4, but it was a decent refresher.
That's an interesting thing. Deadly Alliance, almost not at all any mention of MK4 in it. It mentions the Goro stuff with Kitana, and it mentions what Quan Chi has been up to since, like, Scorpion's ending in 4, where he drags him to the Netherrealm. It reveals that's canon, and what he's, been doing, trying to escape Scorpion's wrath since then. But there's no mention of Shinnok anywhere. There's no description of how 4 ended. In fact, there are numerous descriptions of what happened to characters you haven't seen since 3. Like, Kano's Conquest reveals a whole string of, like, where Shiva and Motaro have been. Like, what happened to them during the invasion. So, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff about how 3 ended and almost nothing about 4. Like, they're trying to pretend that game didn't happen, just skip over it.
It was nice to get some closure, but to this day, man, the question of who actually beat Shinnok is kind of a vague one. We all assume it's Liu Kang. It's Liu Kang's tomb. It's the 4 dragon markers.
Yeah, like, Liu Kang's tomb has 4 gold medals because he beat the bosses and saved the world 4 times. That implies he's the one that beat Shinnok. And there's a little bit in the little trading card bios that came out with Deception and Armageddon. Vogel drops a few vague hints that the reason Shinnok was defeated was because Quan Chi had the amulet and was therefore the source of all his power. So when Scorpion took Quan Chi off the board, Shinnok was depowered, and that's what made Liu Kang able to beat him. We literally know nothing about 4 except that.
You do have to give a lot of credit for Vogel. He took his time. He eventually gave us more or less what most people had been up to over the course of the 3D era. Find out what happened to Jarek and things like that, but he was very careful about it. I think he wanted to resolve things satisfactorily.
I don't know that I would say it has been satisfactory to know so little about 4. Like, what did Fujin do? What did Kai do? Why did Raiden take the staff back from Kai?
I don't know.
What
Maybe he wasn't
happened with
wandering
Draco?
enough. We don't know what happened with everyone, but, some things, here and there. We found out what happened to Jarek, for those of us who care.
Well, no, that's kind of a mystery. We know Jax did throw Jarek off the cliff and said this is not a brutality, this is a fatality. But we don't know why he threw him off the cliff, because Sonya's not dead. Apparently Jax just became a violent asshole.
I assume all of that happened the way you saw it happen, but Sonya actually caught herself while she was falling, and she was okay. Yay.
So Jarek runs off the cliff, but catches himself.
Yes.
And then he throws Sonya off the cliff, but she catches herself.
Yes.
And then Jack throws Jarek off the cliff, but he catches himself. That's what really happened.
Well, Jarek was in healing for a long time, so I don't think he caught himself so much as slowed his fall, but we're getting off track.
Right.
So Kenshi's Conquest mode.
Yeah. So the setup is that Kenshi, who obviously has a grudge against Shang Tsung and wants to kill him and get his ancestors' souls back, has joined the OIA in order to do that. He's joined up with Sonya and Jax, and he's like, hey, let me be your scout in Outworld. And, he's like pretending to be a team player, but really he only wants to go to Outworld so that he can find Shang Tsung and kill him. So while he's in Outworld, hunting Shang Tsung, he just kind of happens upon Ermac. Like, apparently the two of them are drawn to each other because they're both psychic.
It says, Kenshi sympathized with the plight of the enigmatic combatant, there's that word again, Ermac. The Outworld warrior spirits that had manifested themselves in the form of a ninja, of course, had been violated by Shao Kahn in much the same way that Kenshi's ancestors had been enslaved by Shang Tsung. Kenshi was taught the telekinetic slam by Ermac in return for freeing him from the control of the Emperor.
Yeah, so in a sense, the only reason Ermac is referenced was to explain why Kenshi has one of his moves.
Not complaining.
But yeah, that's the thing, is like from this one little seed of pointless trivia, people were like, oh, Ermac is actually a good guy and he's been freed from the mind control now? We want to see him. We want to play as him again. Bring Ermac back.
And so they did.
And Ermac, in fact, makes an excellent good guy. I would say, and I think most people would agree with me, that Deception Ermac is the best version of Ermac in, like, every sense. Story, costume, maybe not moves, maybe 9 or X is probably the best playing Ermac, but the best looking Ermac and the most interesting Ermac story-wise is easily Deception.
Most fun to play, I still give it to Ultimate 3. He's always felt a little bit bulky and kind of clunky to me in 9 and X. Not quite as quick to use, so to speak. Stringing combos together feels like more work. But in terms of story, and to some degree appearance, yeah, Deception Ermac is the shit. This is the game where he really came into his own and, like, earned his fan base. They did so much right.
Yeah.
This is the game where they found his speaking character.
That's true.
He refers to himself as we, not I.
As commanded by the Emperor Shao Kahn, we search for a powerful demon as well. But we are bound together by sorcery, and the lower planes of this realm drain magical power.
His voice has the many voices echo. He starts calling himself we in this game, whereas he didn't, like... There wasn't any such thing as dialogue before Deception in a Mortal Kombat game, unless you count mythologies.
And the 4 endings.
Yeah, that's true. The 4 endings are cutscenes. So yeah, like, Ermac finally had, like, a voice and a personality in Deception. And in terms of, like, taking a character who's been around, but was kind of, I don't know, just there, and immediately, like, making them interesting and, like, making them a breakout star. I would say, like, Deception Ermac is one of the bigger rises from middle of the road to top tier character
Hell
in the
fucking
history
yes.
of MK.
It was unprecedented. He got everything I ever wanted Smoke to have. His bio establishes that, yes, Khan put him together. We are Ermac. We are the fusion of the souls of dead warriors, created by Shao Kahn to obey him without question. We served as his enforcer for many years, until the Earthrealm warrior Kenshi released us from our bondage, and awakened our perception of the worlds that surround us. We are now free to choose our own destiny. That's his first bio.
Yep. Everybody had two bios, like one for their primary costume and one with more information for their alternate costume.
What do you think? Primary or alternate? Which one's your favorite?
In terms of the look?
Yeah.
Definitely the primary. The alternate, he's got his hair sticking out. I don't know that I need to see so much of Ermac's face, because one of the things that I think works so well for the Deception design, the primary, having his whole head wrapped, you know, some people look at it as like a mummy look, and that kind of led the art direction for MKX Ermac. It never struck me as having intended to be a mummy. To me, I always saw it as like he's wearing a turban, but over his entire head. Because the art style that they were going for with Ermac was sort of like to emphasize the mind powers. Like he was kind of like a mystic Swami kind of character now. You know, he's got this gem on his forehead that represents having his third eye open, and it like enhances his psychic powers. And as far as like the covering the face goes, like, yes, some of it is to keep him looking like a ninja, but story-wise for me, I feel that if you were a gestalt being made out of multiple different people, and each one of those people, when they were alive, they had an image of themselves. They knew their face when they looked in the mirror, and that's what they expect to see. And then if you mush them all together into a body that's not their original body, if I was one of those souls, I wouldn't want to look in the mirror anymore because I wouldn't recognize my own face, and that would bother me. So if I was like thousands of different people stuck in a form that's not my true form, I'd want to cover up because like I don't recognize myself. I look in the mirror and that's not me. That's whatever Ermac is. You know, this I have to share this with like 10,000 roommates.
I did also tend to look at it, at the bandages, the wraps. Not necessarily being intended to, like, evoke the image of a mummy, but as kind of a form of mystical binding, I suppose. Something to keep the souls focused and channeled together. I think that there's a good reason that you barely see any of his skin in his primary. It's also, I think, one of the reasons why, like, his clothes appear so baggy. A lot of the 3D era models just kind of look that way, but I feel like it was really intentional with him. It was largely meant to convey the appearance of, literally, a bunch of souls being held together under a controlled form, under cloth and objects meant to, like, focus, keep him together, keep him whole. If that makes sense to you.
Yeah, that's the thing that I like about it, too, that, like, if he has his arms covered, like, the more of his skin is covered up, the more an image you get of, like, the clothes are, like, holding all the souls in, and that he's all, like, wrapped up and containing
exactly
the spirits that make him up. And, like, going back to the not wanting to look at your face thing, I mean, it's like with the brown skin in Ultimate. If this body is made of a bunch of different people, you have to figure that it would have, like, a mix of different elements and features that all these, like, different people have. If you took a face app, you know, and you can take a photograph of two different people, and, like, the AI will figure out what your child might look like by just blending your two faces together, Ermac should look like you put 10,000 people through that app. And that's another thing, like, if he's made of all these different warriors from Outworld, there's no guarantee all those warriors were men. You know, there might be some women in Ermac. Maybe there should be a little androgyny to his appearance, or an issue with gender identity or something like that you could explore. Like,
you could.
What are the demographics inside Ermac? And how would that affect their personality?
I would actually venture to say that the only reason that Ermac appears roughly male is because of what MK9 gave us, and that's the notion that Jared is one of the main forces, if not the main force, holding those souls together.
Well, it's interesting because 9 introduced that, but X didn't really do anything with it.
Well, we're gonna get there.
Yeah.
But it bothers me too.
But the impression I get is that, Jared is just one person in a sea of the souls inside Ermac. And so, there are so many of them that no one personality can really be all that dominant. I would say the most likely reason that Ermac appears primarily male and very muscular is because if you're made out of warriors, then not all, but the majority of them are going to be fit, athletic males.
I would point out, though, that with the majority of those dead souls being Edenians, Jared would be recognized as an authority figure, a leader, so it would make a lot of natural sense for them to see him as something suitable to lead the pack, in a sense.
That's possible. I would say Death is the great equalizer. He doesn't exactly hold rank. He's not still a king in the grave. But yeah, force of personality, if you were, as Jared is often described as being a good king and a great leader who a lot of people looked up to and followed by choice because he was very fair and noble, then he would probably have the force of personality to rally the other souls and get them to agree. And it's if you look at it if Ermac works say, Legion in Mass Effect 2, for those who haven't played the Mass Effect games, Legion is a robot body that is run by an entire colony of AI. They're all sharing the same body. So whenever Legion wants to do anything, all the AI have to, hold a poll and reach a consensus before it decides what it's going to do next. So Ermac probably works a lot like that. Also, the idea that most or all of the souls in Ermac are Edenian was not introduced until 9. In Ultimate Trilogy and Deception, they say that they're all warriors from Outworld. Whereas in 9, they say they are all warriors whose souls were stolen when Khan conquered Edenia. I would imagine that the most logical answer would be both. If Ermac is made out of a whole bunch of different rebels and dissidents and people who've opposed Shao Kahn, that would include every realm that he's ever conquered. In modern Outworld, the primary resistance is Edenians, because a lot of the races in Outworld are either with Shao Kahn or the ones that aren't keep to themselves and live in isolation. You never hear about vampire rebellions or chitin rebellions. Those races prefer to stay in hiding. The Edenians are really the only members of the population who are out there in great number saying, fuck you, Shao Kahn, we're going to take you down. So a large number of the people in Ermac being Edenian makes sense, but not all of them.
I do want to point out that, he does date his description in bio from a point in time before we actually knew Outworld and Edenia as two separate areas, before they were separated.
That is true,
So, I always looked at it as, at that point in time, when Ermac was introduced as being this Legion of Dead Souls, I figured to myself, this is from Trilogy on, I'm like,
Sure.
Oh, okay, this is basically everyone that Shao Kahn conquered and killed when he took over Kitana's home realm. And so as time went on, I just kind of transposed that. I'm not saying that, it can't be people from Outworld and Edenia. That does make sense, and I agree. But I don't blame them for actually taking that perspective. It was one that I had for a long time.
In terms of Outworld and Edenia having been the same place under Tobias, and only, two separate realms in the 3D era as a retcon, yes, but the old games do still refer to Shao Kahn having conquered and merged other realms with Outworld, like the Raptors. We've never been super clear in the games whether the Shokan are native to Outworld, like if Kuatan has always been part of it, or if Kuatan was a separate realm that was conquered. But
I tend to assume that they were conquered.
in the movie, it's definitely a realm. Like, the realm of Shokan was conquered and made part of Outworld. So I always got the impression that even if Outworld and Edenia were the same place, that doesn't mean that Outworld isn't still like a mishmash of a whole bunch of different conquered realms.
No, I agree completely. But I did think that vast majority of people who were in there were from, like, Khan taking over Edenia. That's all I'm saying.
Fair enough.
It's one of the reasons why the 9 Jared reveal made me as happy as it did.
The reveal that Jared is one of the souls inside Ermac that came in MK9, I also was sort of like immediately pleased by it and into it and liked the idea for a couple different reasons. It does just kind of feel like something that makes sense, and you're like, oh yeah, why wouldn't it be that way? Just like the reveal that classic Sub-Zero, that Noob Saibot is Bi-Han, made immediate sense because Noob Saibot's first game was MK2, and Mythologies is all about how this guy is going to go to hell and end up working for the Brotherhood when he dies if he doesn't change his ways. It all just kind of naturally fit.
He had a bunch of instant one-button fatalities that happened to be Sub-Zeros in MK4. Lots of little things. It was a lot of little things along the way. And then they were like, yeah, the fans are right. This does make sense.
Yeah, so Jared being an Ermac also just fits perfectly and nothing contradicts it, and it just slots right in there because he would be an Edenian whose soul Khan took when he conquered that realm. In fact, he would be the most famous Edenian warrior who Shao Kahn has defeated, and therefore having his soul in Ermac would make the most sense.
And in terms of actually having someone who he violates and forces to be subjugated under his command to obey every one of his whims, who better than the guy he murdered? Who better than the guy whose wife he stole?
Right.
This is the kind of thing that Khan would absolutely do, because that's how he rolls.
The other reason that I liked Ermac having Jared in him is because it shot down an obnoxious fan theory that was going around the message boards around the time of MK9 and a few games before, which was people were trying to force the fan fiction idea that Draman could have been Jared, which, first of all, didn't even fit Draman's established lore. Like, Draman's bio says he only died 500 years ago, and he was an evil warlord, and that's why he went to hell. So for Draman to have been Jared, it would have to be a huge retcon that actually Jared was a bad guy.
Like, the timeline doesn't even fit. Did more than one person push this theory?
I don't know. I saw it in a couple of different places.
I can't believe more than one person would come up with a brainchild that special.
It was really dumb, and I'm really glad that it ended up being Ermac instead.
It's like the one guy on Twitter who goes on to Ed Boon's every tweet and asks for Aya Brea from Parasite Eve. Have you seen this guy? I don't know if he's still doing it.
I haven't seen that one, but I believe it without needing to see it. It sounds like a stupid thing that, like, one weird person on the internet would have this one specific obscure character from a long-dead video game stuck in their craw and be like, I need to see this in other video games.
Look, guy, I love Parasite Eve, but it's over. It's been over since 1997.
I also loved Parasite Eve once, and then they made some sequels to it, and I stopped.
Yeah, it took me about a week to sell my copy of Part 2. But anyway, Ermac. So, another thing I want to point out, and this is actually something that was brought up by a couple of people to me a couple of weeks back on a completely unrelated Nine Inch Nails message board that I also happened to post on. Because we're talking about the movie and, you know, what we liked about it, what we didn't like, and someone was like, is Ermac in this? I'd love to see Ermac in this, but, you know, they'd have to have a good reason why he gets taken down, because he's basically a godly figure.
Yeah.
And deception is the start of this. Ermac,
Yes.
Ermac is not just like your everyday combatant. He's extremely powerful.
Yeah, so they took the thought of, okay, if this guy is like thousands of warriors in a single body, and also now that he's free from mind control, his full psychic power and his like mystic enlightenment has been unleashed. Like, imagine what that guy could do. So when we get to his ending in Deception, well, first of all, his bio, his storyline in Deception going in is, okay, Kenshi has freed my mind. I'm now free to choose my own destiny, and I choose to atone for the evil shit that Shao Kahn made me do when I was under his control. The first thing that happens is because Ermac is mystically enlightened and psychically in touch with a layer of reality that we can't see because our minds are too closed or whatever. He is like contacted by the ghost of Liu Kang, who has been set free because Shang Tsung dies in the opening intro. And the ghost of Liu Kang is like, hey man, you're incredibly powerful and you're, a bunch of ghosts looking for atonement. And I'm a ghost looking to, right some wrongs. How about you team up with me and we'll go set free all of my friends who Onaga has under mind control.
Brief note about his second bio. We encountered a fellow warrior spirit who, like Kenshi, understood our suffering. Eager to atone for the atrocities we had committed in Shao Kahn's name, we agreed to help this warrior Liu Kang liberate his allies from the control of the Dragon King. Shao Kahn may be dead, but it seems his essence lives on in this new menace. It is as if they are both manipulated by the very fabric of the realms.
Yeah, that's the other thing. They start hinting that Ermac can sense what's going on behind the scenes in terms of Onaga being connected to the one being.
They're really cryptic about it, but yeah. That's one of the hints.
They make it a little more clear in the ending. So, the ending depicts Liu Kang's ghost and Ermac having come to, I guess, the Dragon King's palace. It's weird because they show in the pictures the Chamber of Artifacts stage, which is connected to the Red Dragon Gang in the lore. I guess they just picked a random background.
Even in this era, there was a lot of cut and paste going on. Katana is just basically Blue Melina from Deception in this picture. So, I tend to view most of the backgrounds as generic placeholders, or just scene settings.
It's interesting because, obviously, like, Kung Lao, Johnny Cage, Jax, and Sonya are just wearing their Deadly Alliance outfits. So the fact that Katana isn't just reused Deadly Alliance assets, they actually put her in the same costume as Melina and colored it blue, would suggest that it was a deliberate choice, that they want Katana and Melina to be wearing the same thing. I guess to set up the idea that Katana was wearing it first, and that Melina is disguised as Katana, and this is why people fell for it?
Maybe. This is a nice little detail we picked up on. I never actually gave it a lot of thought till now.
It's a really skimpy outfit. It's very Melina themed, so... And it has, like, logos and symbols on it that are now associated with Melina.
Maybe Onaga thought she'd look better in it. Maybe it's as
I don't
simple
know.
as that.
I guess it's possible Onaga made them both wear this. But yeah, so in an outer chamber of the Dragon King's throne room, Ermac did battle with Liu Kang's enslaved comrades. Ermac was more than a match for the 5 warriors, but their defeat was not his objective. Liu Kang materialized and one by one freed their souls while Ermac occupied the rest.
Check that. Ermac is fighting Kung Lao, Johnny Cage, Jax, Sonya, and Katana at the same fucking time.
5-on-1, and he's beating them easily. He was more than a match for them.
This man should have been a secret character in MK1. They really, in every way, shape, and form, made him live up to the legend that he was created.
So Ermac is in your top fucking tiers. If you were to make some kind of like Dragon Ball-ass power ranking for the MK universe, Ermac is really, really high.
He's the fuck up there. He honestly is.
So then the rest of the ending goes, eventually all 5 were awakened from their enchantment and freed from Onaga's control. Ermac was pleased that his warrior skills could for once bring about a noble outcome. He sensed, however, that an ominous force still shaped the destiny of the realms. It was everywhere. He could feel its influence on Onaga, though the Dragon King was oblivious to its manipulation. Time was running out. Ermac feared the celebration of this latest victory would be short-lived. So, yeah, Ermac can fucking sense the one being.
That's frightening.
Feel the universe is sentient.
God, Deception Ermac is perfection. He really is.
Look, everybody you talk to about this acknowledges how cool Ermac was in Deception. As a good guy, as a powerful figure, as, like, enlightened, mystical, wise man. So why in the NRS era is he a villain in every game?
Well, we're gonna get to that. But first, a few things. How did you feel about the giant axe and his fighting styles?
So, Ermac's axe is one of the primary examples I always hold up as this is why weapons were filler and not every character needs one or makes sense to have one.
I was never a fan of it.
I do not believe that Mortal Kombat is a franchise where characters should have gear as an obligatory thing across the whole roster. This is not Soul Calibur as much as in the aughts Ed Boon wanted it to be.
It's a nice axe. They even personalized the joint a little bit with some
He has some like logo design elements to it. Like it is designed to look like it fits Ermac, but
the man doesn't need weapons.
A battle axe has a certain flavor to it. You see a character with like a thin Chinese sword, you know they're going to be like an agile, flourishy duelist. You see a character with a big, thick hammer, you know they're just going to be like dumb smashy man. You see a character with a staff, you know there's going to be a lot of twirling and combos. An axe is kind of like a hammer. It's like a brute force barbarian, not very technical weapon. You know, you don't expect to see someone who wields an axe do a lot of fancy, complicated techniques. You just expect to see them chop. But we're presenting an Ermac here who's like a wise mystic. You know, he's like the kind of guy who meditates on top of a mountain to see farther than eyes can see and to know the secrets of the universe. Why would he be the kind of guy who uses an axe?
It was a mismatch, unfortunately. Yeah. I always used Hua Chuan, because that's a thing I believed really did fit him very well. The large extended palm strikes, going forward with a lot of force, not huge combos, 3 hits, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, it was one of those fighting styles where the stance and the motions, it's sort of like Kenshi having Tai Chi. It makes sense, and it like aesthetically looks like someone who's calm and, you know, using very moves that like restrain the opponent and push them back. Sometimes in his stance, he's not even looking where he's throwing because he doesn't need to, because he's, you know, using his other senses. He feels where the opponent is and doesn't have to use a lot of force to put them down.
It was a great choice, stylistically. As bad as the axe was, Hua Chuan was a good one for him. We should talk about his fatalities a little bit.
Okay, yes, we should.
Because he had some good stuff.
Well, it's interesting. Special moves in general, like, I think he lost the teleport punch in the 3D era?
I don't remember him having it, no.
He still had the fireball.
He had a fireball.
It had like a swirly up and down flight pattern.
It looked like a snake. It was a little bit weird.
I guess it gives the impression that he's like controlling the projectile through the air and kind of weaving it in a pattern so like it's harder to dodge it. It almost looks like it's seeking the opponent.
And this is also where he started flying around.
That's true. He had a move where he could levitate, and once you were levitating, as often happens with flying characters in Mortal Kombat, you really couldn't do jack shit. Except he had a second move where while he was levitating, he could stop levitating and land back first on the ground and do like a Jarek-style ground pound.
Or he could dive forward and kick.
That's true. Once again, it's a choice that you would think would give you some kind of crazy mobility powers, but instead it drastically reduces and restricts you and kind of just makes you an easier target for the opponent.
Aesthetically, I was also not a huge fan of, like, the falling back onto his back. It looked undignified.
It's kind of like the axe. It looks like a brute force barbarian attack. He's just throwing his weight around.
I always thought he should have just landed straight on his feet and not, like, bent a second.
They couldn't have just had him do a stomp or like a superhero landing where the fist to the ground causes the ground pound?
Would have looked much better.
I mean, he looked cool levitating, though.
Yeah.
Like, putting his
No
palms
complaints
out
there.
and just kind of... And that was his win pose, too, was to, like, levitate.
Yep.
It fit. Like, it was good flavor.
He also had a whole amount of throw over there, telekinetic toss. Where
That's
he just
true.
kind of grabbed you and tossed you to the other side of the screen.
Yeah, he could lift up and slam you, or he could, like, grab you and fling you across the stage, left to right. Which I believe Kenshi ended up stealing, too.
Probably.
Yeah, people used to complain about Ermac and Kenshi sharing moves and how like they felt like one made the other redundant. I never had that problem with them. It's like, why does nobody ever complain that every Mortal Kombat game has at least 4 characters who all throw balls of fire? but 2 characters with telekinesis is one too many?
I think it's the fact that when they both have telekinesis and they're doing the same stuff, it narrows the focus, and it really makes them seem like they should be doing more varied shit with what they've both commonly got.
I suppose. I mean, I felt like each character had enough unique abilities that them sharing 1 or 2 moves wasn't a big deal.
Well, they made everything alright by 9 in terms of movesets, so I was happy there.
Now the characters have different enough flavor, and to be fair, like, there's a lot of flavor to be had with Kenshi that wasn't fully realized in the 3D era, where, like, the telekinesis interacting with the sword wasn't really a thing until 9 and X. Now he's kind of fully fleshed out and lives up to the promise of what a guy...
with mind powers and a sword could do.
Yeah, to combine the 2 things.
So his fatalities began a string of Ermac doing really weird and or nasty shit to people with his mind powers. In Trilogy, the lift and slam was cute and awkward. Here, the one I remember the best is where he just sort of lifts you up very gently, and he starts pulling you apart from the waist. Just like stretching you out until you just snap like a rubber band.
Yeah.
It is just grody.
Yeah, the other one was basically a redo of the repeated slam, but more violent and animated. Like, he'd do it with one hand, and then he'd get faster, and then he'd, like, do it with both hands for the last slam where you fucking explode against the ground.
It gave it a lot more force.
And then he had, like, a battle cry afterward, where he's like...
Yes.
Puts his hand up in the air, and the, like, in that echoing "We Are Venom" voice is like, yeah!
He says something, it's like 3 syllables, something like that.
Ermac wins.
Yeah, he has a little bit of MK gibberish in there.
I forgot to mention, for the one where he pulls you apart, he contorts you into a ball first. Like, first he breaks everything inside
he
you.
crushes you up into a ball, and then he pulls you in the other direction.
Snap and pull. And then he had that harakiri, where he just kind of head bashed himself into the ground a few times.
Yeah, he just gets on his hands and knees and slams his forehead against the ground until his head explodes.
Once, twice, little dizzy, but I'll see this through. Clonk.
I kind of like it because it makes me think of, like, you know, there's always, like, a character in X-Men who, when they're psychic and they get their powers at first, they're like, too many voices! Get them out! I can't handle it!
Yeah.
It's like his psychic powers are giving him a headache, and the only relief is to break his fucking brain open.
The guy is will personified, and he can take down 5 of MK's strongest warriors. I believe he can do it if he sets his mind to it. So going into Armageddon now, he is the only character to actually get kind of a kata bio.
There was a video in the crypt of him doing a kata and reading out his deception bio in his own voice. And the idea was that this was a test and that all of the characters would have had animated bios where they speak in their own voice.
Yeah,
but
that's number 42.
There wasn't enough time or resources to do it for everybody, so they abandoned the idea and just left the Ermac version in the crypt.
They didn't have to do that, and I'm grateful that they did, because it's really cool to watch. To see him, like, in the living forest, doing these moves.
It's a shame that they couldn't do it for everybody, because it would have added a lot of flavor to a roster that had a lot of new characters in it that could have used some flavor, like Kira and Cobra.
Would have been such a monumental task, though. I don't blame them for not being able to follow through with it.
Yeah.
It's 31 seconds. It's just cool to see him doing these punches. It's almost got a retro martial arts 70s feel about it. Just a little bit. I appreciate it for
There was
that.
like these snap cuts of him doing moves into the camera.
It's 3 punches in different angles.
Yeah, and it would like line them up next to each other in this like stylistic way. It did kind of remind me of like an advertisement from the 70s or something for like a kung fu movie, yeah.
It was a really sweet shout out, I thought. He did not get his own bio.
No, he was one of the characters in Armageddon who not only doesn't get a bio, but also I don't believe he appeared at all in Taven's Conquest mode.
No, he's not there. He's not around.
I think there might be a reference to him in Shujinko's bio or something.
Oh, on the topic of Shujinko, we didn't talk about how, like, he ran into him in hell during Conquest.
Yeah, so in Deception Conquest, you actually meet Ermac as part of the main story. Like, he's not a side quest guy. He actually has a canon role in Shujinko's life. And the way that story goes is when Shujinko is still fairly young and goes to the Netherrealm for the first time, he meets and trains with the demon hunter Ashra. And after he's done training with Ashra, he finds out that Ashra's, like, hunting a demon who has been sent to kill her, so she's heard. And you go and find this demon for her, and it turns out to be Ermac, who's not a demon at all. And Ermac is like, yes, the Emperor has sent me to eliminate this Ashra person because she's been killing off demons who are allies of Outworld, and he wants to put a stop to it. So me and her, we gotta fight. But first, I need your help to find something called a soul stone, because
I'm out of juice.
This is true in Deadly Alliance as a big part of Quan Chi's backstory. Certain regions of the Netherrealm drain magic and soul power from people. And so it's bad for sorcerers to be in those regions. And so they've built these monoliths called soul stones, which basically collect soul energy, and you can go there and recharge your magic. And because Ermac is made out of souls, he needs a recharge. The Netherrealm is not healthy for him.
They're cell phone towers for sorcerers.
Basically, yeah. He needs better Wi-Fi reception.
Like you were saying, it follows up with something that they established with Quan Chi running around and being weaker in lower levels of the Netherrealm and other levels that are harmful.
That was Deadly Alliance explanation for why Quan Chi could not simply teleport away from Scorpion, couldn't just open a portal anytime he wanted. Scorpion had trapped him in the Scorpion's Lair area of hell, you know, the UMK3 stage, is one of those regions that drains magic, and so the longer Quan Chi is there, the less spells he can use to defend himself or escape, and so he's stuck with running away on foot and finding a structure that is a portal to get out of the Netherrealm.
I just want to point out how cool it is that they use that just as a background note for what Ermac needs you to do.
Yeah, it's very smart world building, not only in needing an explanation for why Quan Chi can't just get away, but also like to use it for other characters like Ermac, just to like come up with a reason why you need to help this guy out so that he will, you know, teach you his fighting styles, because that's the point of Conquest mode, is you need to run around and meet all the MK characters, and they need a reason to teach you their moves.
And it works in a lore perspective because, of course, there were sorcerers running around in hell. Why not?
Yeah, And, like, obviously, like, if this is going to be, young Shujinko, set years and years before MK1, 2, and 3, then the Ermac you meet is going to be bad guy Ermac, who's still under Shao Kahn's mind control. So you need a reason for this villain to take your side and to join forces with you. And so, okay, I'll do you a favor and then you do me a favor. It all, work together nicely.
Yeah.
It does establish a frame of reference for the minimum how old Ermac is. How long ago did Shao Kahn make him? So, like, if this is when Shujinko is still 18, maybe in his 20s, we're looking at 30 or 40 years before MK1. I'm sure if I sat down, I could give you an exact number. I haven't thought about it off the top of my head now, but it does establish that Ermac has been around at least that long, which has always been kind of a question mark. Like, how old is Ermac? How long ago was he created?
It could have been pretty much any time.
Yeah. There's a line in MK9 story mode.
Until this part comes up, yeah.
Yeah. When Shang Tsung first introduces Ermac in the tournament and has Liu Kang fight him, he says Ermac is Shao Kahn's newest creation. Which, to be fair, the only characters that we know for sure are creations of Shao Kahn are Ermac and Scarlet. So as long as Ermac is younger than Scarlet, he could be thousands of years old and that statement would still be true.
Just been sitting on his throne, not getting up to much these past few millennia. Just ain't got it in him.
But when you hear that sentence, you do get the impression that Ermac is a new creation, that maybe he was made for the 10th tournament.
Yeah.
So just to establish, in the old timeline, we know from when Shujinko met him that Ermac is a few decades older than that, at least.
At least.
But yeah, that's basically Ermac's part in Deception, in the Conquest mode. And then in Armageddon, as we were saying, he doesn't really have a bio. The most you could assume is that after the Dragon King's defeat, he's enjoying status as one of the defenders of Outworld, like one of the rare hero characters who now roams the wastelands and protects the people, which Outworld really isn't used to having, because typically it's an oppressed wasteland with despotic rulers. And the Deception Armageddon period is kind of a rare era where the villains are either not around or are weakened and trying to regain control of their thrones. So you've got Ermac and Shujinko both kind of acting as like, hey, Outworld has its own Liu Kang for the first time.
He could be doing that, sure. I don't think it really says that in as many words.
Not so much. I mean, Shujinko's bio does say that's what Shujinko's doing. That basically, after Onaga's defeat, Shujinko decided to stay in Outworld and be a citizen there and be like a roaming hero of the people because they don't otherwise have one. And basically, like, the people of Outworld are all celebrating him because he was the one to defeat Onaga. And it's like, what has he got waiting for him if he goes back to Earthrealm, Why not live in Outworld?
I'm not actually sure.
There's no real mention of Ermac, but you can assume that's probably something similar to that is what he's up to, because, again, how many hero characters does Outworld have? Pretty much none.
I don't know. Like, it's a way that makes sense for him. I think I always kind of pictured Ermac in the time period between Deception and Armageddon. Full disclosure, 100% headcanon here, but with his Deception ending being what it was, him sensing something else was out there manipulating events, I'd like to think that he spent that time trying to understand the deeper mysteries of what was actually happening, trying to maybe reach out and touch the consciousness that he was sensing, something like that.
It's true. I feel like his ending in Deception is like the creator's intent was more like, Ermac is one of the few people who truly understands the danger of what will happen if the Dragon King gets the power he's trying to achieve. That basically, there are few people in the game who really understand what the One Being is and what the Dragon King is trying to accomplish and what will happen if he successfully combines the 6 Kamidogu into one, gains their power. It's just sort of a, this guy understands the stakes and how dire things are moment. And doesn't necessarily, like, refer to anything that would happen in the sequel after Onaga was defeated. But I could also see, and it might be interesting, if Ermac was like, now that this threat has been defeated, I can tell this is only like a temporary thing, and this one being thing will be something more in the future. So I'm going to go on some kind of like quest for information, some journey of reading books and meditating. Like, it's the beginning of Fellowship of the Ring when Gandalf is like, I suspect things about Bilbo's ring, so I'm going to ride to Gondor and read all the libraries.
I think that whatever the case is, he's out there keeping an eye on things one way or another.
I think it would make a lot of sense for Ermac to be like, I must meditate on this and understand the mysteries of the universe, because this could be more of a threat in the future. 16
books orbiting his head, all turning pages, while he's floating in midair.
It puts him in the same category of character as Nightwolf often serves, and I think they kind of tried to do this with Kai in Armageddon, like at least hint towards it in his ending, that since MK4, he's become a mountain hermit meditation guy, and he's become like a wise guru, and he can sense the one being's consciousness too, but they didn't really do anything about it because Kai didn't get a bio and wasn't really featured in the story. I think there's room for those kinds of characters, and it would be interesting if they got together and did stuff together.
So the mind trio of Ermac, Nightwolf, and Kai.
The guys who see things.
I've said it a million times, like, Armageddon does remain the point where things kind of started to go downhill for me in terms of story and plot.
I would say Shaolin Monks was the point where you could see it unraveling.
I would too, if I considered Shaolin Monks something that actually mattered.
Well, that's the thing, like, Shaolin Monks...
It's where it started unraveling, but...
Shaolin Monks was declared non-canon after it came out because they didn't realize that it wasn't gonna make sense.
Yeah.
The tone of things in Shaolin Monks, where they were clearly not keeping as tight a track on what the lore was, and not being as, perfectionist as they should have been... You could see that led into Armageddon and the fact that there even was a reboot. I mean, a lot of people at the time when 9 came out said that, like, Armageddon had to close out the story because it had gotten too confusing and too messy. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think there's any mess they couldn't have cleaned up and stayed in the same timeline.
Confusing isn't the word I'd use. Cluttered, maybe.
Perhaps.
Armageddon could have been a good opportunity to just get rid of a lot of chaff.
Yeah, no, there's no reason that Armageddon couldn't have been used to clear out characters that you don't need and wrap up some storylines, like finish a character's arc in a satisfying way. The problem is it didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
Like, it turns out that every hanging plot thread that you've been waiting to see resolved all these years, the actual resolution is just everybody dies. So it didn't matter. Which satisfies nobody.
Welcome to Mortal Kombat, Waka Waka. And you thought death didn't matter. It matters now, assholes.
Yeah, it matters in the sense that you're never gonna see any of these stories continue that you've been fucking waiting for. Hey, what's gonna happen with Cyber Smoke? Will Sub-Zero ever, like, free his best friend? No, they just both die! And then we reboot and we do it over. Except in the second time, he's not gonna free Smoke either.
Don't hurt me like this. We have 2 more retrospectives to go through before I have to bleed from my guts out through my mouth and ass.
Look, it hurts me too, man.
Yeah.
It's a big old gaping wound, and I keep scratching at it.
So into Armageddon, actually, now for Ermac.
Yeah.
Does not actually have a real bio.
No.
Does have a bit of a bit part in the intro, for however canon you want to consider that as being.
I guess that's fair. Well, it's not even really him. It's like...
Well, parts of it are. Parts of it are. There's a point where they're running up the pyramid. Shiva is kind of laying waste to people who come up to her, because we haven't seen her since 3, and that's her big comeback moment.
Yeah.
So, There's a point where Cyrax jumps on her back and she tosses him off, and then, like, Nightwolf and Ermac both charge her. And she grabs them each by the throat and, like, crushes their throats and they drop. Kenshi comes up, stabs her in the stomach, slices her across the back, and she falls. There's a little bit more of a hullabaloo. Johnny Cage and Sonya run up together. Ermac is still on the ground at this point. Fast forwarding a bit, you see Quan Chi impaling Kenshi with a sword through the abdomen. And he's about to finish him off, but Ermac has gotten up and he lifts him up telekinetically and flings him off the pyramid. And Ermac looks down on Kenshi, and then just jumps up into midair and fucking crushes him. And that's when it morphs back into Shang Tsung.
Yeah. The old swerve. Oh no, why is he stomping on his buddy? Oh, it was Shang.
You know, they knew. They knew that moment would punch us in the guts because they knew how happy we were that we formed this relationship between Ermac and Kenshi, and they just put a cigarette out in my eye.
Now, to be fair...
it's ballsy. It's fun.
To be fair, anybody who's looking at any of the events in the Armageddon intro and going, well, that character's dead, that character's dead. Yeah. This intro takes place in the same universe as the Deception intro, which established, A, that you can beat Raiden so bad the lights go out in his eyes. Surprise, he's not really dead. And B, you can crush Shang Tsung's throat so hard that he lies on the floor bleeding out of the mouth, and surprise, he'll get right back up and not be dead.
To this, I say the eyes flashing out are unconsciousness indicators, and Shang Tsung fixed his throat. Throats get crushed all the time, it's fine.
I believe what's being indicated here is that it don't matter. None of this matters. Li Mei can totally get stabbed through the stomach by Hotaru and get back up later. Nothing short of a decapitation can kill these fucking people.
I think it's as canon as you want to believe. It works for me. But that is all you get for Ermac, aside from his ending. And his ending goes as follows. The energy of Blaze shattered Ermac, separating him into the many warriors who comprised his being. Now each with his own physical form, the Ermacs are linked psychically and act according to their collective consciousness. No longer a mere fusion of warrior souls, Ermac has become an army.
As Armageddon endings go, this one is A, fairly straightforward and makes sense for the character. Like, it's not a bunch of bullshit that has nothing to do with them, like Kentaro getting 4 magic swords, or Tanya getting the ability to control dragons.
No, it's not one of the worst ones out there.
It's also, B, one of the shortest endings in the game.
Yeah, it's 3 sentences, that's it.
Yeah. It doesn't even say what the army of Ermacs will do. Like, it doesn't indicate whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. I guess you can assume he's still a good guy, because his default personality, when not under mind control, is established to be good guy. But usually these endings at least say, like, now this army will take over such and such realm, or defeat such and such enemy. It's just...
There's a 4th sentence, usually.
Yeah. This is as much of an ending as, and then he became Planet Smoke, the end.
Spoilers! Oh, man. You know, the whole modus operandi was obviously, Blaze gives someone an incredibly special power. Make the focal point of their ending as mind-blowingly amazing or ludicrous as possible. That was what they were going for, and all sense of direction for that was not a concern.
You know, if this ending were to come after 9 and were to be illustrated, it would probably be a pretty cool picture of, like, King Jared leading an army of ghosts.
I would like to see this, actually. So now with the mainline 3D-era MK games out of the way, we move to the Shaolin Monk's appearance that Ermac had. And in my opinion, it's one of the most memorable ones throughout the character's entire career of appearances. In a lot of ways, it was a lot of shout-outs to a lot of the old rumors.
It's surprising how deep cut they went by putting him in the Warrior Shrine, because most people wouldn't even know that that's where the EGM rumor said he was.
Yeah. There's that, and the EGM rumor said that he was fought with, like, Johnny Cage using all punches. And during the fight, when you reach the guy, he actually summons a stone Johnny Cage midway through it to help him, like, mess you up.
Yeah.
It's a really fun little fight. Like, it's totally optional. It's out of the way. You have to have, like, the long jump ability. I don't know why the Warrior Shrine is, like, in the Wuxi Academy, but, you know.
You need the ability that lets you swing on the poles that you get at the Deadpool. The Deadpool is near the end game, so you have to, for some reason, be almost to the end of the game and decide, you know what, I'm going to go all the way back to the Wuxi Academy and search for stuff that I might have missed.
And when you do actually, like, find the off path that lets you get there, there's a bunch of statues, you know. It's the Warrior Shrine. Except there's one that, when you examine it, it looks a little different from the others.
I mean, it says that. It's just, it's the ninja statue. It's the shared Scorpion Sub-Zero statue from MK1. Because the statues don't have colors, right? So there's only one ninja statue. You go over to the ninja one, and when you examine it, the text box says, something seems different about this one. And then you examine it like one or two more times, and the stone explodes, and Ermac was inside the statue.
He does this little pose, like, with his hands on his hips, like, ha-ha!
Gotcha!
Fun bit of trivia, though, when you examine the Johnny Cage one, which he summons during the fight, it's like an incredibly lifelike statue of the Earthrealm warrior and actor, Johnny Cage.
Yeah, like, they hint that it's going to be part of the fight. This Stone Johnny is so real. It's almost like he could come to life right in front of him.
I'm looking at the examined one, though, the one Ermac pops out of, and it really does look like the character. I think it's just a straight-up Ermac statue.
Yeah, they probably, like, modeled his specific knee pads and whatever.
Yeah, it's just the one ninja statue, and it's pretty much just Ermac. There's no Scorpion or Sub-Zero sitting there.
At the point where you're made of stone, the detail is so far gone that I don't know that you can really tell a difference that well.
Well, once he starts shaking and, like, coming out of the stone, like, the forehead gem starts glowing.
Yeah.
It's definitely him.
So Ermac's outfit in Shaolin Monks is interesting because it's basically his deception costume, but then he's got MK2 wrist and shin guards.
I actually really like it. I'm not sure. I may prefer it to the deception because it looks a little less blocky. The gold trim is really nice.
I think I like it better too because I like the MK2 shin guards on him. And they put like this eyeball symbol. It kind of looks like his third eye gem on the knee pads.
Yeah.
I actually really like the way that looks.
It's definitely a great appearance.
Yeah.
You could really tell that they put a lot of love and effort into, like, this part of the game, this little hidden part here. And in the fight, he feels like he's fucking OP. He starts summoning these giant stones around and trying to crush you with them. If you actually lose, he's got a fatality where, like, he slams you on the ground a couple of times, left and right, around the arena. Then he just summons up two stones and, like, crunches you between them and you fall down.
Yeah.
It's really cool. And he's got a special move. It's one of those get the hell away from me, like, zone gaining specials.
Every boss in Shaolin Monks had a move that would interrupt your combos if you were doing a combo to them that went on too long. And his was sort of like the motion he makes is kind of like a ground pound, but what it does is sort of surround him in a dome of like soul projectiles.
They're really dark green and, like, they just shoot straight up. It's really cool.
He, like, makes these geysers, like, these little soul NATOs shoot out of the ground.
Then once you actually take him down, they probably intended this shit to be hilarious. It really is.
The finishing move you do to Ermac is kind of a jokey one. He's lifting a giant pillar, and then you, like, kick him to the ground, and he loses his hold on the pillar, and it falls on him and crushes him.
He tosses one rock, Liu Kang kicks it back. Knocks him down on his ass, then the other one's still floating up in the air, and he gets up, and nope. His entire upper half's gone.
Yeah.
Definitely a very, very memorable appearance.
I always really liked it. I think it is like you said, a little weird that they put the warrior shrine at the Shaolin Temple instead of on Shang's Island. But I can also kind of see like an argument for it.
Yeah, me too. The Shaolin would build statues to honor
Yeah,
the greatest
they would have
competitors.
some kind of after the tournament have some kind of commemorating the heroes of the tournament who saved Earthrealm and whatnot sort of thing.
Of course, that leads to questions as to like why either Shang Tsung or the Shaolin would build a statue dedicated to Kano.
And he was there too.
Look at this asshole.
Well, that's the funny thing about the Warrior Shrine is Shang has all these statues of guys that he prepared before they even showed up to fight. Like, there's a statue of you there, and you're currently at that tournament. You haven't even done anything yet, and he's got a statue of you.
The way I used to look at it when I was a kid was the MK tournament took place over like a matter of weeks, and at some point, like, they got to the semifinals, and maybe they had like a day or two to rest up. So Shang goes, you know what? This has been a great tournament. I'm going to commemorate the fine heroes who very, very nearly beat me. I figured it was a moment of arrogance on his part.
I always figured that those statues were there the moment everybody arrived, and it's like to freak them out, and it's like, I've already crafted this in your memory because you're going to die.
Alright, so that's it for Shaolin Monks, I guess.
Yeah.
What a great little appearance.
I always really liked the Ermac fight. I think it's one of the better boss fights in the game.
Totally. Very memorable. And so now we move on to the Netherrealm portion of the evening, wherein we answer the question that I had ages ago when Ermac was set to rule Outworld with his own brand of oppression. What would he be like as a bad guy? Honestly,
pretty boring.
I feel like you have to blame that more or less on the fact that their cinematic story modes only allow for a certain amount of primary and secondary antagonists.
I find that the idea of a character who is designed to be a mindless automaton-like servant being presented as that same character minus the master doesn't really go anywhere, does it? That's why turning him good in deception was worth doing, because it's the only way to give him personality. Like the zombie or the robot, the thing that doesn't think for itself, once its strings are cut, what do you have?
Just, for argument's sake, I don't think it would have been possible to actually see Deception Ermac, presuming that we had a story mode equivalent to what we have now back then. I don't think that there'd be room for it. We wouldn't get it. So, we have evidence of, like, Ermac still, being more or less evil now, but during the MKX period, still kind of acting on his own, switching sides in the MKX comic.
Well, we should rewind. We should do 9 first.
Yes, we should. He gets to do so much in that game.
So, obviously, like, MK9 Ermac, there's really, like, no reason to expect that he would be any different from Trilogy Ermac because it's the same circumstances. Retelling of 1 through 3, Shao Kahn is around. He is a servant of Shao Kahn, and he serves his purpose in that role. I have no complaints with MK9 Ermac. Except, I don't think they should have given him the honor of blowing up Jax's arms, because it's, for Jax, a dramatic moment, but other than that, it doesn't seem to matter. Like, Jax doesn't consider Ermac his arch nemesis from then on. There's no revenge plot. They talk about it a little bit with Jackie wanting to kick Ermac's ass in the sequel, but it's not like she tries to kill him. It's like a blink and you miss it thing. It doesn't really have any dramatic gravitas. Let's say, for example, in Scorpion's Revenge, they use Goro ripping off Jax's arms as a moment to demonstrate how powerful Goro is and hype him up as the champion of the tournament, because he is the final boss of the movie. Whoever's going to win the tournament has to beat this guy. So the first thing you want to do is show how hard this guy is to beat. Give him some impressive moment. In wrestling terms, you want to give him a squash match to put over that he's the big strong guy. But Ermac getting that moment doesn't go anywhere, which is sort of a small example of a bigger problem. Like, going back to Deception, we know that Ermac is by far the strongest of the warriors under Shao Kahn in his army, because he had that moment in Deception where he took on 5 people at once and easily beat them. So 9 kind of continues the theme of that in the cutscenes. Every time Ermac shows up, he gets a very dramatic entrance. He does something visually impressive. But then the fight that follows is like Stryker beats him in a one-on-one fight, you know?
It is disjointed, I'll agree to that.
Yeah, it feels like tonal whiplash. Like, he does a big dramatic thing in a cutscene, and then in gameplay he's just another guy. In fact, he's not just another guy, he's just another jobber on the tier of Baraka and Reptile.
Which is unfortunate.
There's no consistency to mood when he's on the screen.
But it's not a problem exclusive to Ermac. It does the same thing with Goro and Kintaro.
No, Goro gets it the worst.
Smoke speeding Kano and Shang Tsung at the same time. It's a running theme. I appreciate the fact that they tried to make him appear incredibly powerful, but you're right about the story mode being...
There's a simple fix, too. Just let the bad guys be playable. Just do story mode the way Street Fighter V did, where you don't have to be the same person 4 fights in a row. You can just switch to whoever should win that match in that moment. Stop treating it like a training mode, and just do what the story needs.
Would be nice.
That's all it would take. This just play as Ermac and kick Stryker's ass.
Then you have a dead Stryker and,
Well, Nightwolf can come in at the last moment to save Stryker. He doesn't have to die at the end of the fight.
Does he need to? I mean, still wind up in the same place at the end of the story mode.
I would not kill Stryker off. Plus, it gives you a chance. Like, Nightwolf is another character like Ermac, who is supposed to be more powerful in cutscenes than they appear to be in gameplay.
I'd like to have seen that match.
If Nightwolf had come in to save Stryker from Ermac, I think it would work a lot better. Because then you'd push an Ermac, and you're pushing Nightwolf. The only guy who looks bad is Stryker, but he's supposed to be bottom tier. His whole thing is, I'm the guy with no superpowers.
He's Batman. He's got a plan.
He's Batman if a Justice League story treated Batman realistically.
That aside, apart from sending the subway station escalator and ripping Jax's arms off.
Yeah, he rips Jax's arms off. He has a moment where he telekinetically flings an entire unit of soldiers after Sub-Zero had rescued them.
Right, that was it.
Doesn't he come in the room after Cybersub has already beaten Goro and Kintaro at the same time, which psychologically tells you this guy is a step up from fighting Goro and Kintaro at the same time? Like, oh, you did that, now you have to do this. How is Ermac supposed to be scarier than 2 Shokans at once?
Well, there's actually a little something else in MK9. Now that I think about it in this light, it's actually funnier. It's that fight in the Challenge Tower. It's him against 3 Goros.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, we do not think this is very fair. Which side's he talking about, the Goros or himself? I
mean, maybe Ermac should be considered tougher, but I also still feel like that's shitting on Goro. And I wish there was some way they could both look good.
Me too. I mean, if you put them both up against each other, I honestly don't know in a realistic fight who's supposed to win. I don't.
Well, everything treats Goro like a jobber now, so...
Yeah, but with Ermac, there's at least kind of a reasoning behind it. He's like an ultimate weapon.
I guess. I would just avoid putting Goro in situations where he's going to lose so often. Because all it does is hurt his image.
Like, don't get me wrong. You put Goro up against almost anyone. Goro against Kintaro, Motaro. Pick a good guy apart from Liu Kang. Pick anyone from the bad guy period apart from, maybe Shang Tsung, definitely Shao Kahn. I give it to Goro, but Ermac is the exception. It's a tough fight.
If Goro were allowed to, win a bunch of fights and then fight Ermac, I'd be comfortable with it. But you have to, it's probably better just to not put the 2 up against each other or compare the 2 directly to each other, because...
Agreed.
Because it's gonna hurt one of them. Writing, a combat-based narrative, like a fighting game story or a shonen anime, is very much like booking for professional wrestling. You have to protect your main eventers. It's all about image,
So covering his bio, as punishment for resisting Shao Kahn's claim to the realm of Edenia, the souls of the vanquished were torn from their bodies and fused together to form the being now known as Ermac. Bent to Shao Kahn's will, Ermac is his foremost enforcer. The essences of so many souls bound together give Ermac immense telekinetic power, an advantage that will destroy Earthrealm's resistance to Shao Kahn's rule. Not to retread the ground again, but,
Yeah. It clarifies things for some people, confirms things for others. I still feel like not every soul needs to be from Edenia.
I agree with that.
I feel like the story makes the most sense if Ermac was made somewhat recently out of souls Shao Kahn has had inside him for a very long time. When Kahn or Shang steal souls, they just store them in their bodies. So, thousands, maybe millions of years of conquering realms, Kahn has all kinds of different souls in him that he can yank out of himself and make a warrior out of. They don't all have to be from Edenia.
I always figured he was a few thousand years old, and they could come from anywhere. It just is a bit of a narrowing down of the scope, which is, a shame. I could agree with that.
But to jump ahead to his ending.
With Shao Kahn dead, Ermac was no longer bound to him. Anarchy erupted within Ermac as the many warrior souls that comprised his being struggled for dominance. Only one had the strength of will to quiet the chaos. The conflict resolved, Ermac returned to Outworld, determined to reunite with his past. Queen Sindel and Princess Kitana were shocked to learn the truth, that trapped among the many spirits within Ermac was their husband and father, King Jerrod. Though he would never be the Jerrod they once knew, Ermac would forever serve and protect his queen and the Edenian people.
So that's the reveal. It was never stated Jerrod was part of it before this game, and weirdly it was never brought up after this game.
Frustrates me.
Somehow it doesn't come up in all of MKX.
Really frustrates me.
It's very obnoxious. The vast majority of people, if you look on Twitter or any message board, people like this. They want to see the Jerrod side be more dominant and have it be part of the story and see Ermac interact with Kitana and Sindel.
It was answering yes to a question I'd had since 1995.
And yet, nothing.
And yet, nothing.
Well, the other thing about this ending is it suggests the most realistic scenario for what would happen if Shao Kahn died, and Ermac was no longer the thing mind controlling him wasn't around, his mind would be free. Well, what would he do with that freedom? All of the different souls inside him would have to decide what kind of person they want to be collectively. And most of them, because they resisted Shao Kahn, are good people, so they'd want to do something good, which is what we were told in Deception. Now you get to MKX, and we're presented with an Ermac, free of Shao Kahn, who, for at least 2 years, willingly serves Kahn's heir Melina, seemingly out of not knowing what to do with himself. Like, he just apparently doesn't think about it. He just is on automatic and serves whatever the ruler of Outworld is around.
Which doesn't make that much sense to me, unless Melina somehow inherited the power to control him. Which, I can only say that's supposition.
The way it's written in X sort of presents it as though Ermac's instructions, when he was created and placed under Khan's control, were not serve Shao Kahn. They were serve the Emperor of Outworld. And he's just continuing to follow the instructions, which is not what we were told in previous games. Also of note, there are some intros in X, which people were confused by because they saw them, when trailers were released before the game came out, and they were like, so what's Ermac's deal? There are a couple of intros where someone says to Ermac, Shao Kahn is dead, and Ermac says, come feel his presence. There are some other similar lines of dialogue too, but the basic gist is that people got the impression that Shao Kahn's soul was somehow inside Ermac since he died.
Yeah, no.
And that is not what they were going for. That is a misinterpretation. The dialogue is really trying to say that Ermac is suggesting that he is Shao Kahn's legacy, that he is continuing to carry out the Emperor's will even though the Emperor is gone. That's what that dialogue was meant to me.
The few lines he has in X are, "Our creator Shao Kahn is dead, we will serve whom we choose. We would serve the new ruler of Outworld. We exist to serve, bound by Shao Kahn's magic." So he's not free.
The scenario as presented in story mode is that Ermac has been serving Melina because he is acting as though he's programmed to serve whoever the Emperor is. But once Kotal Khan stages his coup and takes the throne from Melina, Ermac immediately decides to side with Kotal and gives the justification that I'm supposed to serve the Emperor, but no one said who the Emperor is, so I can choose who I want the Emperor to be, and I choose that guy because he seems better at the job than you are.
Seems like a decision Jared might have input into.
Yeah, I mean, if they presented it more as though Ermac is exercising his free will and he's choosing Kotal's side because Kotal is a good person, there'd be nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, if Kotal was a thoroughly good person and not a dipshit. But anyway.
He's a better person than the alternatives we are presented in that game, at least.
This is the truth, sadly. He's the lesser of several evils.
If I were Ermac, I'd be like, all of you are assholes, I'm taking the throne for myself. But that's not what we got. The other confusing thing is the MKX comic, wherein Ermac continues to serve Melina after the coup.
Was that a continuity error?
I don't know what version of the script Sean Kittleson was supposed to be fucking working from. Was there an earlier draft where Ermac was on Melina's side? Maybe. All I know is in the game we got, Ermac very clearly, immediately takes Kotal's side when the rebellion happens. And in the comic, Ermac doesn't do that. He continues to serve Melina after Melina has been kicked out of the throne, seemingly because he feels sorry for Melina. Like, there are a couple scenes between the two of them where he appears to be just kind of serving her out of pity or, like, compassion, which is a weird choice, but okay. And then at the very end of the comic, Kittleson tried to put things to the status quo they're supposed to be by having Ermac say, sorry, Melina, but after all this Reiko and Havoc stuff, I've decided you suck as a leader, and I'm taking Kotal's side. He's demonstrated that he's better at it than you are.
The line is, you are not crazy, Melina, but you are too impetuous to lead.
Yeah. Which, debatable, honestly, whether or not that's true. I mean, she is too impetuous, but she might also be crazy.
He's being very generous with her throughout the comic.
He's being very nice to her. As he says, I'm leaving. It's the most polite way he could think of to turn in his resignation.
While we're talking about Ermac in the MKX comic, I just want to bring up the wonderful, confused, constipated face he makes when Melina asks him about Havoc. That the mere thought of his
Most
name.
of the time you see Ermac's face in the art in the comic, the fact that they're trying to draw him in that mummy style that he has in X, mostly he just kind of looks like a sad, confused, moaning. His face don't look good, is what I'm saying.
The MKX model has the benefit of additional shadow and a bit more wrinkly detail here and there. Here he just looks like an old man with green eyes and really enormous brows.
Yeah.
We didn't actually cover his physical appearance in Fatalities yet.
Yeah. So his primary costume in 9 is very heavily based on the one from Deception. And in some ways, I think it's an improvement. Mainly that it makes his sleeves and pant legs black and red striped instead of solid red. I think that's an improvement. But the addition of these armored squares on his chest, I think, are too busy and unnecessary.
They're a little bit of a weird detail, yes.
There's a detail on his back. So on his back in Deception, he had a symbol. Kind of looks like a pair of sais or a stick figure man, kind of. It's similar to the Shokan logo, but not exactly it. I think it might be the family crest of a Japanese dynasty or something, because the same logo is present it's the logo of George Takei's faction in the Command and Conquer games.
What the hell?
Yeah.
We're certain it's not like a character or a kanji or something.
Well, if you've ever seen like all the family logos of the Japanese houses during like the Warring States period, like the logos they have on their flags and stuff, they're all kind of geometric shapes or flowers or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is one of those. I'm not sure why they gave it to Ermac, but that shape is the basis for the red laces on the front of him that modern games now depict as kind of a big metal rib cage thing he wears on his chest. But the reason I bring it up is that it's different in 9. Instead, he has this big gold circle on his back with like a very elaborate, I'm not sure if it's a dragon or a flaming skull, but the line art for it is so faint that you almost can't see it. So it looks like he just has a big circle of solid gold on his back for no reason. If you're seeing it from anything but like way zoomed in close. It
vaguely looks like a dragon skull. The features are a bit more humanoid than dragon, I think.
From even the slightest distance, though, you can't actually see the carving. All you see is the big gold circle, and it looks plain and bland, and you're like, why is that there?
Between the two of them, I gotta confess, I actually have something of a preference for the alternate. I think I might like the main a little bit more, if not for, the neck squares, and if the colors were reversed. That there were more red than there was black.
Well, on the chest I could see wanting more. I think the laces are too thin. They were very thick in Deception, and that helped the color distribution.
Maybe.
I think it would help if they were thicker, like they were in Deception. As for his alternate costume, that was the start of them putting him in trench coats, which led to like the mummy design in MKX.
I don't know about a trench coat. It's
basically a trench coat. It's got long like coat lapels or whatever you call them, coattails.
I would call it a set of coattails more than anything else, because,
well, it's tight on the chest.
The sleeves are not attached to the rest of it, so I hesitate to call it a trench coat. It's
like a sleeveless trench coat, yeah.
I confess, I'm guilty of wearing those during my college years.
It was popular in the late 90s, early 2000s.
What I actually really like is his belt.
Yeah, that's the thing. His alternate is wearing the belt from Deception. And his primary has a similar one, but it's got a big green gem or orb full of souls in the center. And I think, because Shang Tsung was wearing the same thing in his old man costume in this game, and I don't think either one of them needed it. It's a little too garish. I'm not so much on the giant, round, glowing belt buckle.
No, I've often wondered if there was any kind of significance to that, half-moon belt buckle pattern he has. It's nice. I'd call it one of his more defining features nowadays.
Well, the idea of the crescents are sort of like hooked to each other, so that neither one can kind of pull past the other, and that keeps the belt tight. So it's just kind of geometric.
It's very eye-catching. I don't know why I like it so much. I'm also actually a really big fan of how the red highlighting works around the rims of his coattail thing and around the edge of his hood. The mask actually looks like it's more red than black. I think it's a better blend of color.
I do like the mask because it's closer to a UMK3 mask, and since 9 is where he's theoretically supposed to be UMK3 Ermac, neither costume really works as a high-def reimagining of what he was actually wearing in UMK3, which again is a problem I have with most of the costumes in 9. The characters just don't look like it's a remake. They look like it's a new story.
That's still in my mind how I picture it.
But yeah, so the trench coat thing inspired the concept art before X came out, the quote-unquote Scarecrow Ermac that everybody loved. And that design is what led to the Ermac designs we've gotten since. And I never really liked the Scarecrow concept art. I think there's a place for a ninja in a trench coat like that. I think that place is Noob Saibot. I think Ermac should look more like the Middle Eastern Swami Guru kind of thing they were going for in Deception. I don't think he needs to be the fucking trenchcoat mafia ninja. You know, I don't think he needs to be the one who's representing the Matrix.
I had forgotten about Scarecrow Ermac till you brought it up just now. I'm looking at it now, and yeah, this is much more, No, you know what? In general, I don't like it for either Noob Saibot or Ermac. This is just... Boiled down to it, it looks like something an NPC or a Nazgul would wear, and I don't like that aesthetic in MK Ninjas. I like them to look like they're of that world and not a separate world. I don't need them to look like fear demons from The Lord of the Rings or like Batman villains.
Yeah.
It sacrifices an inherent Mortal Kombat quality. Whatever you want to call that.
That's an issue I have with it too. And I think like what I would describe it that bothers me is that it feels a character in a trench coat feels like they're from Earth Realm. Outworld should not have like late 90s I'm going to the industrial rock concert outfits. Period. The Netherrealm can have
That's
that.
a Netherrealm thing.
Yeah. That's definitely a Netherrealm thing, which is why I suggest it would probably look alright on Noob Saibot. But I don't imagine this kind of clothing would be a style that exists in Outworld. You know, like, just culturally, it's breaking my immersion.
I look at it and I think Dark Souls. It's a Dark Souls or a Bloodborne enemy.
Yeah.
It comes from a different, darker, grittier world.
It's very European fantasy.
Yeah.
It's not Asian fantasy.
That's the word for it, yeah.
Yeah. So the MKX outfits kind of took the trench coat thing and ran with it, and then they combined that with the idea of Ermac being like a withering mummy. And there seems to be like an intended but not followed up on story aspect to the mummy thing where, and I think it's actually written out in the text that goes with the concept art for Ermac that's in the crypt. It seems to be that because Shao Kahn is dead, Ermac doesn't have the ability to recharge. You know, they presented in MK9 that he has to like sleep.
Yeah, like in the Soul Chamber.
It's like an extension of the idea in Deception that in the Netherrealm he had to recharge his magic because the Netherrealm drains it.
I did like, by the way, we forgot to cover that fact, that he sleeps in the Soul Chamber.
Well, it makes sense.
It does.
It makes sense in Deception because the Netherrealm drains all magic and soul energy. It's the realm where souls are supposed to be trapped. It feeds on souls. But that's the Netherrealm. Ermac's regular day-to-day existence, mostly lived out in Outworld, shouldn't be constantly draining him. I don't feel like he should need to recharge at home, because that presents a scenario where you can very easily kill him off without having it be done in a fight, where you can just go, I don't want this character around anymore, so I could just say, oh, he couldn't recharge anymore, and he withered away and he died. You're putting a time limit, you're giving him a lifespan that's shorter than the human characters even. He doesn't need it, it weakens him, and part of the appeal of Ermac up to this point has been what a powerful character he is.
I don't object to him like needing a soul stone to recharge or like to have him sleep in a soul chamber. For me, it's two sides of basically the same thing. It's an energy source, whatever.
Here's the thing for me, is that the soul chamber, I believe, should not be a permanent stage in the Mortal Kombat universe. Story-wise, the Soul Chamber was created for MK3 to be the place where Khan keeps the stolen souls of Earthrealm during the invasion. I don't think it should be there in Gold and Armageddon. He's not invading Earth in those games. He doesn't have all those souls that need storing.
Those things were just put there as, like, you know, a best-of stage collection.
Yeah. If the Soul Chamber didn't exist in any game other than 3, and Ermac needs to recharge off souls constantly to survive, then where is he getting them from?
There's nothing that says that there can't be soul stones elsewhere in Outworld, I guess.
I feel like that's not a structure that would exist Because Shao Kahn would be like, no, I don't want souls being absorbed by these stones. I want souls being absorbed by me.
Maybe he set one up for Ermac, keep his dog fed.
I don't know.
It makes sense to me. There's sorcerers wandering all the realms. There's probably some tucked away in Earthrealm that no one's ever heard of. There's portals tucked away in Earthrealm that no one knows about except for sorcerers and deities. Why not a fucking soul stone?
Look, it doesn't not make sense. I just don't like the idea of putting a short lifespan on Ermac, because the goal of Ermac as a character,
I can't agree with that.
should be to get him away from being controlled by Shao Kahn. Like, Deception Ermac, good guy Ermac, is the Ermac you should always want. That's the ideal Ermac that all stories that have Ermac in them should be subtly working towards. And if Ermac separated from Shao Kahn will quickly wither away and die, then you're taking all the fun out of it for people who want Ermac separated from Shao Kahn. That's all it is.
Here's how I see it. I tend to think that something as powerful as Ermac is, a legion of 10,000 or more souls, it needs to have some kind of inbuilt weakness. Otherwise, why is Shao Kahn sending Goro out to tournaments and not this? So having that kind of weakness would make sense as a way for Shao Kahn to kind of control this horrible monster that he's created.
I wish there was a way to justify him needing to recharge his magic that didn't say if he doesn't do it, he will turn into a decrepit mummy and fall to pieces.
I think we should just ditch the entire mummy angle, to be honest.
Yeah. The other thing is, so you know how I always complain that if Su Hao is such a bad character, then why does Kano keep stealing from him? Why does he have things worth stealing? Doesn't that prove that those were, in fact, aspects that were good ideas? By the same token, if you're going to look across the roster and you're going to go, we need a mummy character, and then you make Ermac the mummy character, or Mortal Kombat should have a vampire, and then you give Scarlet those traits? Why don't you just fucking use Draman and Itara? That's what those characters were created to do. You don't need to steal from them and give to characters who already had their own gimmick.
We talked about how maybe the raps served a purpose to maybe keep the souls inside. Maybe they were mystically enchanted, but
visually the idea is they wanted to illustrate that he's falling apart, so he has all these bindings and things to hold himself together.
Visually, I appreciate it in one light, and on another, I don't like it when it's done in that kind of MKX way that's very legacy influenced.
Yeah.
I generally don't believe we should ever be seeing Noob Saibot or Ermac's faces. It's more effective when you have this spiritual entity who is a massive power and dead stuff if all you get is their eyes to work with.
Well, I already spoke at length of why I think Ermac has strong character reasons to hide his face from himself in the mirror.
Yes.
That it would make him uncomfortable. Because he has severe body dysmorphia, or whatever the term.
Dysmorphia, yeah.
When you're made up of multiple different personalities, and each one has their own
what the hell do you see when you look in the mirror?
In their minds of what they're supposed to look like, and then they look in the mirror, and that's not the face that they want to be seeing. Yeah, wrap that shit up. I don't want to see my nose and mouth, because those aren't my nose and mouth. Those are the nose and mouth Shao Kahn forced on me. So it's just narratively speaking, Ermac should have wrapped up as much of his face as humanly possible. Nobody wants to see the fucking nose and mouth.
Generally speaking, I'm not a fan of any of his outfits in X, except for maybe the palette-swapped Crimson one. That one just looks good on him, Scorpion, and Sub-Zero.
Is that the one that's like the animated-looking,
yes.
Low poly,
yes.
The action figure? Yeah.
Honestly, I would have liked to have seen that in Scorpion's Revenge.
I also find that the way he's animated, because he's so scrawny...
He looks really... Yeah, he's stiff. He feels really stiff. It wasn't a problem he really had in 9 either, but when I play him in 10, I don't...
It's because they made him scrawny to get across, the mummy imagery. If he's going to be withered, then his body type needs to be very gaunt. And then they gave him the pose, like the stance, his fighting stance, is to be floating with his feet slightly off the ground.
I like the idea in theory.
Yeah, in theory, but they've just never really... And this is a problem they have with several characters in Injustice 2, whose fighting stance is, well, I can fly, and I'm pompous, so my feet will never touch the ground. They always look kind of awkward, because...
That's it,
It's mostly because NRS animates everything by using motion capture tech, and real human beings can't float like that, so... the way they're motion capturing these floating stances is probably pretty fucking awkward.
I feel like Ermac should be really nimble and agile when you're using him in a fight, and I've never been able to shake that sense of being a juggle king that I got from him in UMK3. To me, that's always going to be the ideal Ermac gameplay-wise. I was not a fan of how he played in X, and to a lesser extent, a little bit of 9. He just feels like a chore to use.
Well, one of the things I like about that Deception outfit, the sleeves and legs are so baggy because it's going for that, like, that mystic Swami kind of look, that, like, kind of Middle Eastern inspired look. It makes him look very large.
It's also less of an issue in the 3D games because they are just kind of clunky in terms of gameplay.
Well, yeah, everybody was kind of thick and chunky.
Yeah.
Everybody's 3D models. But Ermac... it made sense for because his clothes are so baggy. I thought that look fit him because, again, he's supposed to be this powerhouse who can take on 5 people in a fight and win at the same time. He should look pretty buff. I like the idea of Ermac having, like, a big, thick build and, like, a very sturdy, stocky fighting stance.
Buff, yes. I wish he didn't feel quite like a sack. But that's neither here nor there. What else has he got? The UMK3 outfits in X did not particularly look good. They looked like molded plastic.
Well, the squares aren't of the right shape, and they used the mask from the, like, Sub-Zero's select screen photo, which is not the mask that Ermac is depicted wearing in, like, his Versus portrait or Tobias concept art. Like, his mask is supposed to look like the MK4 Scorpion mask, just without the grooves that look like teeth.
Fatalities! We gotta talk about that thing in MK9, man.
The silly one where he shrinks you and steps on you?
What? I thought we were done with this! I thought we left that back with Jackson MK3, but no!
This time, instead of using...
oh, God.
Instead of using the Pym particles to get bigger and step on you, Ermac uses them to make you smaller and step on you.
That's a choice?
I feel like they were just out of ideas, man. Like, you can't come up with 2 ways to use telekinesis? Really?
Well, they did it better when X came along.
Let me ask you this. If you were making a Marvel game and you had to design finishing moves for Jean Grey, is this what you'd do? Would you have her shrink people and step on them?
But his other one, though. His other one where he just kind of, like, slowly lifts you up and just pulls all 4 of your limbs off, flips you around, and smashes you headfirst onto the floor. That's not so bad.
It was alright. I feel like it was an excuse. They thought it would be funny to do that thing where you sort of weeble wobble when your stump body is slammed into the ground. You know, just kind of rubber band back and forth, like, cartoonishly. That's why they did that. Because Raiden has one just like that.
Special mention to his Babality animation, where, like, he lifts himself up using his old soul power, then he just kind of gets stuck there. Crying.
I do like the fact that Babalities in 9...
were character unique, yes.
Yeah, they sort of combined the idea with the idea of a friendship and gave it some flavor. And so you're not just turning people into a baby. There's something funny about it, too.
Yeah. Now, his X Fatalities, on the other hand...
I have to be honest, and this is probably true of most characters in 9X and 11, is that I can't remember most Fatalities from this entire era unless I'm looking at a video of them. Like, I can't recall it off the top of my head what he did.
Well, first off, he's got one where he, after a bit of pulling, he pops her head off of its socket, plunges it back down into the body, and pulls it out through the stomach.
Right, I remember that now.
And he's just kind of got it, like, sort of sitting there and floating. Which is, it's unique. It's something to do with TK.
I just, like, the fact that I can't remember these, because they're all, like, 3 random ways to get some gore on the screen packed into a single finishing move. I just find that the things they used to do in the arcade era games, because they were short and sweet, they tended to be more memorable. They tended to, like, be iconic and stick with you.
You don't need to tell me that. I've been preaching to the choir for, like, 20 years.
Yeah.
Fatalities shouldn't be interpretive dance. But as far as being a spectacle goes, I do like his other one in this game. This is the one that stuck with me the way that the Wishbone from Noob did in 9. Where he kind of lifts you up, quickly snaps you a few times, and then pulls your guts out of your mouth before crushing them and letting them fall. The ball of intestines.
The ones that I liked best in X, even though I can't remember all of them, the ones that I did like best tended to be the ones that involved throat or intestines, because those are the ones that would make the gurgling noise.
Yep.
That was the best part about the finishers in X, was the sound effects made them more disgusting and realistic.
The intestines through the mouth here is probably, like, one of my favorite ones in the game, because it's memorable. Yeah. Maybe just skip the preliminaries, just go right to the intestines next time. More effective that way. More memorable.
I don't know. I just feel like Ermac should just standard have the same finishing move every game. You just lift them up, crush them into a ball, and then pull them apart from the ball, like tight in, and then spread them out, and they just fucking explode in every direction.
I think he could honestly just lift you telekinetically and have him clench his fingers, then just have everything fucking explode. Depends how you want to go about it.
Just have the body do what a person can do with their hand. Ermac lifts his hand up, you lift up. Ermac makes a fist, you're crunched into a ball. Ermac spreads his fingers, the ball explodes.
Bingo, exactly.
That should be the standard Ermac fatality. And I feel, and I know there's a lot of people who will disagree with me because they think it'll get boring. I think characters should just have the same fatalities every game. I'm tired and I'm done, and I don't think they have the creativity to keep coming up with new ones. Just come up with 2 or 3 classic, iconic finishing moves for every character and just do them on repeat. Kano should always rip out the heart. Scorpion should always do the toasty. Sub-Zero should always do the spine rip as one, and the freeze you and shatter you with an uppercut as the other. Just stick with the classics.
I don't blame them for wanting to do different things, to try different things every time and see if something else sticks. But the only thing I'll say is, when you're writing out fatalities and they've got 3 steps, go ahead and skip the first one. Just go ahead and skip the first one. See what that gets you. See if it's more effective and more immediate and more visceral.
You know what?
That's all I can ask for.
There's a thing they've done with a couple of characters like Kung Lao and Jax in the NRS era, where if they have 2 classic fatalities, they try to combine them.
Yeah, it doesn't always work.
Sometimes they do it smartly, and sometimes they do it in a stupid order. Like Jax will clap your head and then
you'll rip off your fucking arms for some reason.
That's fucking dumb. If you're gonna do that, have him rip the arms off first, and then clap your head with your own arms.
Exactly.
It's not rocket science. It shouldn't be this hard.
Honestly, I kind of tend to think that the reason that they do this, they make it spectacle, they draw it out, is that they're afraid of the immediacy and the effectiveness that we kind of want. That they want these fatalities on some level to be over the top, to be ridiculous, to be dumb, to be silly. They're actually afraid of being controversial all over again.
But then at the same time, if anybody was going to complain and raise a controversy, they're going to do it anyway just because of the degree of gore involved. Like, no matter how silly you make a fatality in the graphics of MKX or 11, the graphics themselves will disturb the kind of people who would complain. So you're succeeding at nothing. So just do something that has like a powerful impact instead of something that you think will be cartoonishly over the top. And this is good. You know what? All of this complaining ties into my central problem is that the Mortal Kombat franchise has over the years only sunk deeper and deeper into being known as the game with the fatalities, and that this influenced the new movie we just got, where nobody cares if the story is garbage and
Absolutely.
the dialogue was written by a 14-year-old because it had fatalities. I'm almost to the point where I think Mortal Kombat should stop having finishing moves.
Dun, dun, dun.
I feel like this franchise might be more enjoyable and more successful if it was just like Street Fighter.
Oh, that hurts me to hear.
I'm so done with the shock value stuff and the gore stuff. I don't care about that at all. That was never what I liked about MK. That was just the thing that gets people's feet in the door. After you see fatalities, you're supposed to invest in the costumes and the story and the characters. But
or the gameplay these days.
People stop at the fucking appetizer and they don't try the main course, and they think that's all MK is, and I'm just done with it. It's not new, it's been like this since 1992.
I'm not kidding myself. That's MK's trademark. It's always going to be its trademark. But the thing is, we've gotten to a point where that single factor has become the defining detail of the entire series. The new piece of shit movie is all the evidence that you need for that.
I think in 1992, when you wanted to stand out from the crowd, and you wanted MK to have an identity that people would notice, yeah, fatalities. But now, 30 years later, it's hurting us more than it's helping us. We don't need that anymore. People know what Mortal Kombat is. You can fucking back off of the silly gore shit and try to make something that has some fucking depth.
I suppose there is no need for us to go over Ermac's biography because it just restates what we already know.
Yeah, there's...
He worked for Mileena, then he worked for Khan. He's a key component in his rebellion. But the ending. The ending is interesting.
Ermac's ending honestly should have come true.
You know, for all I know, maybe it did.
So this is going to connect to stuff that happens in 11. So let's just read the ending first.
Alone once more, Ermac searched the labyrinthine corridors of Shao Kahn's old fortress, searching for the source of a faint voice calling to him. Suddenly a wisp of dust brushed his chest, wrenching free one of his many souls. The dust took the form of a man who began to consume soul after soul. As the weakened Ermac stared helplessly, he recognized the mysterious figure. The sorcerer Shang Tsung returned from death.
Now see, technically this ending would have killed Ermac off, but Ermac's not in 11 anyway, so it wouldn't have made a difference.
I don't know that we got any mention anywhere in any of the dialogue as to where he and Reptile wound up being. None.
No.
They're just MIA.
That's the thing. A lot of things in 11, there's nothing in the game about them. But Sean Kittleson will be glad to explain them to you on Twitter, as if Twitter is a canon part of the game. Which that doesn't help anybody.
I think the actual explanation for this lack of information is they didn't know going forward who would be DLC and who wouldn't. So they decided not to back themselves into a hole.
Certainly. But there is one specific character who is in the game, named Shang Tsung. And guess how he came back from the dead? Because he died in MK9, right? Right? We all saw it?
Yes, it was one of the last instances of Shao Kahn acting like a badass and using soul energy.
Guess how Shang is alive in 11 Aftermath?
Is it Sand Frieza?
It's Sand Frieza. But here's the thing. So obviously, they don't say anywhere in the game that she's the one who brought him back. They say a bunch of stuff about how she shaped his destiny, and that she's the reason he steals souls, and that she set up all this stuff so that he would power up her crown. But they never specifically say that she brought him back from the past because he was dead in the present. They never say that in the game. And here's the reason it's weird. We see in story mode very specifically that literally every single character, every single one that Kronika brings to the present from the past, she brings them from the same point in time. She brings them from Kung Lao's chapter of MK9, the end of MK2, when he was fighting Shang and Quan and Kintaro. She brought them all from right before Kung Lao got his neck snapped, because Kung Lao was the first person to die in 9, so everybody had to come before the first death, not counting Bihan, because he's supposed to die, become Noob Saibot. Now here's the problem. At that point in 9, Shang was young. Shang in Aftermath is an old man at the start, which means Kronika took Shang from a different point in the past than she took literally every single other character from, for no other reason than because his primary costume has to be old. And the game doesn't explain this. And Kittleson or Dom, if you ask either one on Twitter, hey, how come Shang is old when everybody else came from MK2? They will tell you Shang is just the only one that she took from a different time period. For no reason. That's just how it happened. No explanation. So I submit to you that it would have made a billion times more sense if Ermac's MKX ending was true instead, and Kronika had not taken Shang from the past. Shang had just already been alive in the present as an old man, because he killed Ermac to come back from the dead.
That's my headcanon.
That's what it should have been.
Things you can accomplish if you actually pay attention to things that are going on around you.
So, speaking of Ermac in 11, how do you feel about that outfit he's wearing in the crypt?
Well, it sure does give us an idea of where he is now. On a stick.
I have some problems with it.
I know it has a lot of fans. But the thing is, I look at it, and I can't shake the feeling that it's mostly, or at least halfway, made up out of, reused assets from other characters. That's Kung Lao underneath there.
It's either Liu Kang's face or Kung Lao's face. That's one of the problems I have with it, is that for some reason he's suddenly Asian. His skin tone is zombie gray, and he has some glowing green cracks in his face. I will say I like that it's not a trench coat, that it doesn't have any coattails. My biggest problem with it is that, so the ribcage logo thing, that they took the laces from Deception, and in X they turned it into a big metal plate that looks like a ribcage. In the 11 Crypt outfit, he has that shape, but it's made out of a glossy red plastic. It looks like his outfit is made from a giant Jolly Rancher. And I don't understand why every single person I see on the internet who talks about this outfit says they fucking love it. Because it looks like a goddamn giant Jolly Rancher to me. What's good about it? Why do they like it? I don't understand.
I am 100% convinced it's made out of various discarded bits of gear from other outfits. 1 or 2 original touches thrown in. The cross pattern over the mask is from a scarlet mask. Hell, I think the actual mask is a scarlet mask. I swear, I've seen that loincloth bit on, I don't know, maybe a Noob Saibot outfit. Some of this stuff is original, others not so much.
You know what else bugs me a little bit? Is in the crypt, and this is true in both X and 11, your character who is running around the crypt unlocking the chests, has the ability to get Ermac's mind gem thing. But in both games, when you get it, it's large enough to wear on your chest, and it's red instead of green.
He doesn't look like a mummy anymore. There's that. Lest we complain about everything.
Yes, he doesn't look like a mummy anymore, and like I said, he's not wearing a trench coat. I like those elements of it.
I kind of like the arm sheaths that ended like the stones on the knuckles.
Actually, you know what? I take it back. He is kind of wearing a trench coat. He does have...
Wah, wah.
You can't see them when he's impaled on the spike, because we should mention, Ermac's role in the crypt is to fall into the pit and die. The crypt is a weird bit, because, like, obviously it's not canon. It's a fucking gameplay mode that's, like, a side game where you unlock stuff. There's nothing to do with storyline in it.
Are you telling me that kid's not actually the descendant of Apap, that I'm being lied to?
You know what? That's the other thing. Every bit of storyline that the crypt references is from the old timeline. Like, you walk into the warrior shrine and you hear Shang Tsung's voice say, "This is where Liu Kang defeated me." Liu only defeats Shang in the MK2 attract mode in the warrior shrine. In 9, he did it in the throne room.
I'll take it. I will take it. I'm not complaining.
There's also, and again, we joke about how many different characters killed Jared, according to 11. In the crypt, there is an item that says Shao Kahn killed Jared, which was what it canonically was in the old timeline, according to Deception.
Still is, according to me. La 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 la.
It's because we like things that are good.
Yes. So before we get to, like, external media and shit, your favorite Ermac outfit?
My favorite Ermac outfit...
Deception Main. It's Deception Main,
of all
isn't
time,
it?
yes, Deception. It's no contest. Deception Main, then there's a power gap, then UMK3, and then all the other crap he's worn.
I suppose Deception Main will have to take it for me, too. I've never been particularly crazy about any Ermac outfit since Ultimate. I suppose when I look at the guy, to me, the Ultimate 3 gear is just, to me, him and Rain. I can't unsee it. And if it were
Scorpion has worn it in so many games. I tend to think of it as Scorpion's outfit. But I do, like, also think of it as Ermac's outfit.
If I had to break it down, when I think of Sub-Zero, or at least Bihan, I think of the Mythologist outfit. When I think of Scorpion,
right.
I think of the MK2 outfit. And if I have to actually be insane about it, I might be tempted to say that I think of Annihilation Rain. Or Ermac. Maybe.
I don't think the squares should be hexagons, but...
I don't know why I like the fact that they're hexagons, I just do. I can't explain myself, I can't justify it.
The time we waste thinking about his hexagons, he would use to capture souls. For you.
Is it time? Is it time? Now we discuss Ermac and MK Media.
Well, so chronologically, he did appear in something before he was in Annihilation. Ermac's first media appearance was in Defenders of the Realm, the animated series, wherein we got to see him unmasked. And he's kind of a weird beatnik with an earring and a soul patch goatee. And here's the weird thing. There's concept art in Deception that his alt costume was originally going to be unmasked, and he was going to have that goatee.
My God!
His Defenders of the Realm appearance was going to be canon.
That's like one of the last ones I would have ever considered that they'd make official. What a weird choice.
That's why the Deception alt bothers me, because yeah, they put a mask on it, but his hair is still out, and so I'm still just reminded of Defenders of the Realm.
What an odd choice.
To have an unmasked Ermac in the first place.
And he's got no pupils either. He's got like the blank eyes.
No, yeah, he has blank white eyes.
Soul patch. He's got the beginnings of a mullet, almost. I don't know. It's a strange visual appearance.
Well, most of the characters who had like some kind of flat top or slicked back short hair were drawn with the same like hairline. Like Sub-Zero kind of has that. Defenders of the Realm had an art style. You can see the reused elements.
God, I'm gonna have to go watch more episodes after we're done here, aren't I? Christ.
The other weird thing is, like, obviously Defenders introduced the character of Ruby, who is basically just Jade but red. The only difference is that her ninja outfit was based on the male UMK3 ninja outfits. Like, she had Ermac's mask, and she had the pointy-shouldered V with the squares on it. She was like Ermac's lieutenant or something like that. She dressed like him.
I consider it almost a shame Frost didn't have a variation on this in 11. So tell me about the Ermac episode. Does he get it one to himself, or does it just appear to...
No. Ermac just kind of appears as, like, one of Khan's henchmen. He's got some dudes with him. He's got some red ninjas that work for him, like Ruby does. I don't even remember if he actually participated in a fight scene himself. I don't remember getting to see him do his moves.
Okay. There's, like, one screenshot I need some context on.
Okay.
Because there's this girl wearing pink, and he's standing next to her, and he's got his leg up, and his foot's at her throat, and he's pinning her against a wall, and his arm is very casually on his leg. Like, it's thing. What is happening here?
Oh, yes, that is Ruby in disguise as a human.
Okay, so they're just messing around there for whatever reason.
So the premise is that Jax found out that his grandpa died and that he inherited his farm. So he took some time off from the team to spend on grandpa's farm and take a vacation, basically. And Ruby introduces herself as a next-door neighbor and, like, starts seducing him, basically. And then Ermac shows up and pretends to attack the both of them to not, give away that Ruby is a double agent. And that's what you're seeing in this screenshot here.
Thank you for the context. Classic stuff.
The rest of the episode plays out that Jax is taken hostage and the team has to save him, and Kitana knows who Ruby is and is like, "You traitor," and Ruby's like, "We used to be friends, Kitana, and I feel bad about what I did. I will help you free Jax." She's Jade. She's fucking Jade. I don't know why they didn't just call her Jade and color her green. Pissed me off.
That one, Conquest. Strange aversion to Jades.
Threshold had a weird thing about creating fake Jades. And then when they do real Jade, she's Tanya.
Food for the next episode. We'll list them all.
Yeah.
Alright. So now, I guess it's annihilation time.
It is time to destroy all your expectations.
Okay.
If you expected to see Ermac do telekinesis or reference being made out of souls, destroy those right now. Because he's just a dude in a red ninja outfit who's like, I want to be a general too. Him and Shiva are all arguing over who will get to be the general. And Khan is like, no, none of you will. Sindel's going to be my general because I can trust her. Because that's how it happened in MK3.
Just a brief note, Ermac is played by John Medlin, who was the stunt coordinator for the film. So he had a bit more to do off screen.
Yeah, that's the Threshold tended to reuse the stunt guys. They got some mileage out of them. And then he really does nothing the whole movie until the ending, where he fights Sonya solely because Sonya's the only one who doesn't have, like, a grudge match to fight. Like, Kitana pairs off against Sindel, Jax pairs off against Motaro because they're both the strong one. Liu Kang is fighting Shao Kahn, and that just leaves Sonya with
leftovers.
Which is literally what she calls him in the dialogue.
I do like how, you get that moment of Jax and Motaro both looking at each other like, beefy. We know who we're fighting.
And then
something happens, doesn't it?
yeah,
Something weird happens.
the closest thing Ermac does to demonstrating a power is that he spawns Noob Saibot as a shadow clone from himself.
I don't remember what my exact reaction to that when I saw it in the theater was. I think my friend John and I just kind of looked at each other. And then looked back at the screen, like with our eyebrows half raised, like, what? Because this is more than a year, maybe almost 2 years after UMK3, I think. He was established.
People would have known, if they knew Mortal Kombat, they would have known who Ermac is. And who Noob Saibot is. And they would have known that they're not the same character.
There were a series of, like, trading cards or something for the film that specifically mentioned his telekinetic powers. That he does not have in this film.
The DVD has bios for all the characters in the movie. And those bios are taken from the game.
Oh my god. Just another way to get one more character into the film, I guess.
I fucking guess. I feel like there's probably a way Noob Saibot could have entered that fight, could have, like, come out of the shadows.
Come out of
instead
anywhere
of
that's
melting
not...
off Ermac's chest.
Come out of anywhere that wasn't Ermac's chest, or Ermac specifically. What a weird choice.
Yeah. What a weird movie.
Every now and then I just think about it and I'm like, why? Why that way? Did they not want to do wire work to show us telekinesis or something? I don't know.
I just... Like, I'm not as bothered that he didn't do his special moves, because a lot of people in that movie, in both Threshold movies, don't do any special moves.
Every now and then
you get by is... Did Noob have to come from his chest? There are other ways to get him into the scene.
Every now and then you get one. Shao Kahn threw a fireball. I didn't need Ermac to use telekinesis. It isn't a deal breaker. It's just so many weird choices all rolled into one defining bizarre as fuck moment, you know?
You know what else is odd? Is that there are a lot of characters who appear in Conquest. Most of them were in Annihilation already. But one character who never appears in Conquest was Ermac.
Yeah. I mean, I have to assume that if they'd gotten a second season out of it...
was in Conquest, and he certainly didn't melt off a red guy's chest in the show.
He was still kind of oily, though.
No, he was made of oil. That's true. That's true. In fact, literally oil. The way they defeat him is by setting him on fire.
I can only assume that had Conquest gotten a second season, we would have gotten some Ermac action.
I guess. I mean, I guess it's hard to fit everybody in. Like, they put Reiko in there. That was nice of them. Honestly, that's probably the biggest role in anything that Reiko's ever had. Because he's in, like, 3 or 4 episodes.
Having actually gone through the series just now, front to back, I can only say I was surprised by how much detail in Reiko that there was. It was quite a bit to work with.
It's a good depiction of Reiko. I enjoy Conquest Reiko very much.
Eye makeup needs a little work, but other than that, no complaints. In closing, I'll just like to say that I don't hate Ermac's Annihilation mask. I don't hate the hexagons. The V could be lower. Overall, with a bit more budget, this could have been a good outfit.
Yeah, it looks like plastic. That's the main thing, is you can tell that it was cheaply made.
Yes. When I was about 16 or so, my friend's grandma was a seamstress, rest her soul, and she made me an MK1 themed smoke outfit. It looks better than this. It looks so much better than this. I imagine
it would, because it would be made out of cloth. It would look like a real ninja.
It was good. Anyway, I guess that's that.
Well...
Does this just leave Legacy?
That just leaves Legacy, yeah. Wherein he is... So it's weird, because they tied him into Kenshi. Except whereas Kenshi and he were friends in the old timeline games, in this they are presented as enemies. So the episode adapts most of Kenshi's backstory from the games correctly. It does make a few odd changes. For example, because as is true with all the live-action stuff WB makes, ninjas and samurai can't be allowed to exist in the present day. That's not realistic.
That's insanity. What are you talking about?
Kenshi had to be from, like, the 1500s. I should point out, Kenshi was played by Dan Southworth, the Quantum Ranger from Power Rangers Time Force, Virgil from the Devil May Cry games. I thought he did well in the role.
I have never seen either of these other things. Yes, I've never played a Devil May Cry game in my life. One of these days, I swear to God.
You're missing out, and you should do something about that.
Everyone tells me so. The list of things I've ever played, man. Mass Effect, never played a single game. Devil May Cry, haven't played a Resident Evil since, Jesus, probably 4. Take out the time.
Well, that you're not necessarily missing out on. I mean, 7 and 8 were okay.
So I hear.
I like 5, but 5's no good unless you play it co-op.
I assume 6 is the one no one likes to talk about.
6 is trash.
Yeah!
Everybody knows 6 is trash.
Good stuff.
But I digress. So the Legacy episode starts with Kenshi in the Middle Ages of Japan, because that's the only time a guy with a katana could have possibly lived.
Could you imagine how much of the Street Fighter cast under, like, Tankeron? They would have basically had to set most of the movie back in, like, the feudal era.
Yeah.
Blanca would have been like an Oni wood demon or some shit.
Warner Brothers is just the worst.
They really are. I can't wait till Disney buys AT&T and fix all this.
Well, isn't I thought AT&T was selling all of Warner Brothers to the Discovery Channel.
I have no idea.
You know what? It's weird. Every month there's new news about who's selling what where, you know?
I can't keep fucking track anymore.
It's a mess. It's a mess. I hope the whole thing falls apart. I hope they just dissolve and all of their IPs become public domain. Or get split up a dozen different companies.
This will legitimize our Mugen project. It's officially canon, bitches.
But anyway, we're introduced to Kenshi, who is not yet powered. He is, a wandering swordsman who wants to prove he's the best in the land, which is so far true to his game's backstory. And then he meets an old man named Song. And Song tells him, "You're the best swordsman. You deserve the best sword. I know where you can find a legendary magical sword." And he leads him to this cave where Sento, the blade of his ancestors, is buried.
Now, I do want to interject here to say that out of all things, that always struck me as really cool in all my years of playing MK that I could have ever hoped to see on the screen. This little blurb of text from Deadly Alliance that's just there to explain how Kenshi can use telekinesis and where Ermac's been this entire time. Never in a million years would have expected to see this shit going on in any adaptation. From, like, the Kenshi origin to, like, including Ermac with it. It is really nice to actually have this little bit of relatively obscure MK history that Joe Public would not know about depicted for all to see. It's fucking cool.
So in the games, as you may know, Song led Kenshi to a graveyard called the House of Pikara, which was the resting place of Kenshi's ancestors, and it's where Sento was buried. And when Kenshi opened up the tomb the sword was in, which was called the Well of Souls, Song revealed himself to be Shang Tsung in disguise. And he stole all the souls out of the well. And because the souls were all flying up into Kenshi's face, because Shang was, like, behind him stealing them, all of those souls just shooting up into his face and past him to Shang, burned out his retinas and left him blind. And then Shang laughed at him, "Ha sucker," and took off. And Kenshi was left alone, fondling in the dark, trying to figure out where Shang ran off to. He couldn't see. And he picked up the sword, and discovered that the sword had a psychic link to the souls of those ancestors that Shang had just stolen. And the sword awakened psychic powers in him so that he could see with telepathy instead of with his eyes. And Kenshi proceeded to spend the rest of his life hunting for Shang to get the souls of his ancestors back into the sword.
That was the game. But in the show?
I think they do reveal that Song was Shang in disguise. But I don't think he steals the souls. I think what happens instead is he leads Kenshi to a cave because they had no budget, so they just had to shoot at a cave. And Kenshi finds the sword, and the sword is being guarded by Ermac.
Yes.
Who, by the way, is just a zombie in black rags. He doesn't even have any red on his costume design. His face is completely uncovered, like he has a hood, but no mask, like you can see his full eyes, nose, and mouth.
Well, correction. There are traces of red. You can see them very faintly. But you have to be looking at, like, screen stills in order to see it. There's bits around his scarf. There's bits around, like, his elbow wrappings. It's very faint, but there's touches of it.
Yeah, like, you'd have to be, like, looking at him with a spotlight on him. Like, the lighting that they chose for the show is all very dark and desaturated. It's color graded down to a gray because that is what everybody does now. He just looks like a zombie wearing black rags and a hood.
If I had to define him, I'd say homeless ghost.
Yeah, homeless ghost is a good... And he's got black bile drooling out of his mouth.
For reasons.
He just looks like a zombie. Anyway, Ermac appears out of thin air. Like, I think there's some ghostly green mist that he teleports into the room in the form of. He almost appears the way smoke would appear. But Kenshi's going for the sword, and Ermac shows up. And then it cuts straight to outside the cave, and Kenshi comes running out of the cave with his eyes bleeding, holding the sword. Like, they don't show us the fight. All we know is that he got the sword, but Ermac left him blind. And then in a later episode, Kenshi is somehow summoned to the present day by Raiden to compete in the tournament because the tournament is Eternal Champions in this fucking web series instead of being Mortal Kombat happening once every generation. It's like the best fighters from history are assembled.
I'm watching it right now, a brief excerpt of the scene, and
yeah,
when they're summoned to the island to fight in Legacy Season 2, you do see Ermac coming down behind him as streaks of green mist that just form into him when they hit the ground.
Yeah, everybody is teleported to the island. There's no boat because budget. So they all just kind of teleport to a beach. And here's the other weird thing, is that, like, you see the characters in their home times and locations, and they're wearing one outfit. And then when they teleport to the island, they arrive in a different outfit, and it's some of them with different hairstyles. Like, Kenshi has long hair in the 1500s, and when he's teleported to the island, he has short hair. And he's wearing this, like, puffy pockets of armor. It's like I don't know how to describe it. It's like modern athletic gear that's sort of meant to look vaguely like his Deadly Alliance costume. But in the past, where he was taken from, he was wearing samurai robes, you know? So everybody arrives with different hair and different clothes. Like Raiden groomed them on the way to the present day.
Ermac does get to do some interesting things in his fight with Kenshi later on.
They do have an actual fight scene between each other. Like, once everybody arrives on the island, Raiden sends them forth, and it's basically like the Hunger Games. It's just like Scorpion's Revenge. They all just wander out into the wilderness and fight the first outworlder they run across.
Ermac does this telekinetic choke, which then causes Kenshi to kind of flip over onto his back in midair. Which, okay, I can see that.
They tried.
But then he starts spewing snakes out of his hands. Energy snake tentacle things. I guess they're soul tentacles, and he just grabs Kenshi by the legs and then by the neck and starts choking him out while he's on the ground. And it's at this point that, like, Kenshi starts trying to move the sword telepathically.
He Jedi tricks the sword into his hand, and he, like, telekinetically shoots the sword at Ermac, and it goes right through him and kills him.
And that's about all she wrote.
Yeah, that's the whole fight. And,
Oh, wait, hang on, no. After he shoots the sword, he puts a telepathic bolt through him. Makes a hole in his chest.
oh, yeah.
And Ermac falls to his knees and disintegrates into, like, a green mist.
Yeah, he like, poofs away, like, when you kill a bad guy in a
Yep.
video game, and they blink and disappear.
I guess that's our look at Ermac. That's all there is
Yeah.
to it. So your favorite fatality, I'm going to assume, is the rapid telekinetic slam from UMK3, because it's mine.
I think I like the deception version of it, and like I said, I like the idea of him crushing them into a ball and then expanding them in every direction, which I believe was what he had in 9. Was the game where he had that? I don't know. I'd call it a tie. I don't know that I feel super passionate about any of Ermac's fatalities.
That's basically the situation for me with his fatalities and a lot of his outfits. There's a lot there that I appreciate, but there's nothing that, like, jumps out to me as definitive or legendary or the best thing he ever did, you know? I almost feel like there's room for improvement.
Yeah, there's definitely, like, potential. Like, nobody has thought of the most visually interesting way to kill a man with telekinesis yet. But it definitely isn't rip 3 body parts off one by one.
Yeah. That's our Ermac retrospective. We are many. You are
Or
but...
are we but one?
So, thank you all for tuning in to this episode of The Lost. Vince, we hope you've seriously enjoyed this. We hope it's everything you ever hoped it would be, and more. Our next episode is going to be something that I've been working on for quite some time now. And hopefully it'll explain a few things. Like where Ermac's been. You'll see. Alright. Thank you very much, one and all, and we'll see you again very soon.
See you later, nerds.